Chapter 31. Hello, nice to meet you. Jinan extended his hand with a warm smile. My name is Jinan, and I'm the person in charge of this island. Homing Holy reached out with both hands and firmly grasped Jinan's hand. Nice to meet you, Colonel Jinan. I am Don Quixote Homing Holy. Compared to the gentle and calm father figure he presented to his family, Homing Holy's tone could be described as that of a devoted fan. I have long admired Colonel Jinan from afar, and I feel truly honored to finally meet you today. Jinan waved his hand and chuckled. You flatter me. I'm curious as to why you chose this island as your place to settle down. Homing Holy paused for a moment and then smiled. The place where I spend the rest of my life naturally requires careful selection. I learned from the newspapers that among the 4 seas, only the South Sea under Colonel Jinan's jurisdiction gives me peace of mind. Haha, I can guarantee that. The South Sea will be the safest sea, now and forever. Jinan directly stated his ambition, emphasizing that his actions were superior to those of the Marines in other seas. I feel ashamed of my former status as a celestial dragon. I cannot change the minds of other celestial dragons, so I can only move here myself. Homing Holy sighed softly. People's ideas are indeed difficult to change. Celestial dragon. Fire Fist widened his mouth, his face filled with disbelief. When did celestial dragons become so reasonable? Shouldn't they point a gun at someone's face upon meeting them and demand that they become their slave? Homing Holy said with a smile, yes, former celestial dragon. Now I am just an ordinary human. Would you like to come inside for a bit? Although it's also my first time going inside. Haha, I haven't seen the inside of such a large castle before, it's the perfect opportunity to take a look. Colonel Jinan, young gentleman, let's go in together. Inside the castle. Jinan looked at the interior of the castle and couldn't help but exclaim, this is truly the home of the wealthy. This place is so luxurious. Quzan and Fire Fist exclaimed together. They had always lived in dormitories, and they had never seen such a scene, even in their dreams. The difference between here and where I used to live is quite big. Homing Holy murmured. Jinan, Quzan, and Fire Fist all rolled their eyes. Celestial dragons never disappoint when it comes to enjoying life. Mythical is the home of the world's greatest wealth. To celestial dragons, gold and silver treasures are like ordinary stones, things that can be seen everywhere. Therefore, they cannot imagine the lives of ordinary people. Ordinary people, of course, cannot imagine the lives of those nobles. Homing Holy led the 3 into the living room and introduced them to his wife and children. These 3 are my guests. Come and meet them. This is my wife and 2 sons. Homing Holy introduced them to Jinan and the others. Doflamingo, Rosinante, this is Colonel Jinan, whom I have been mentioning to you. Doflamingo, wearing sunglasses, stared at Jinan and the others expressionlessly, without reacting. Rosinante nervously grabbed his father's pant leg and hid behind him. I'm sorry, they're seeing strangers for the first time. Homing Holy smiled gently, casting an apologetic glance at Jinan and the others. Jinan waved his hand, not minding at all. It's okay, it's normal for children to be shy. Father, where are the slaves? Let the slaves do the cleaning and tidying. We were exhausted just bringing in the luggage, Rosinante whispered from behind his father. Quzan and Fire Fist exchanged glances, their expressions changing. Everyone present had a certain level of strength, so even though Rosinante spoke softly, his words were clearly heard. Sigh, Homing Holy said softly, Doflamingo, Rosinante, I have to start teaching you from scratch. We have to do these things ourselves from now on. I don't want to. Slaves always do these things. Doflamingo became agitated. Homing Holy placed his hand on Doflamingo's head, carefully teaching him. Doflamingo, we have to live as humans. Doflamingo looked up. Humans. That's right, our lives will be richer than they were in Mythical Zoan. Homing Holy nodded. I'm not talking about material wealth, but wealth in our hearts. Doflamingo gritted his teeth, clearly not agreeing with his father's idea. I'm sorry, I've made you laugh. Homing Holy sighed. He knew that changing his children's minds wouldn't happen overnight. Fire Fist shook his head repeatedly. No, no. Jinan beckoned to Homing Holy. Come with me for a moment. Then, the 2 walked towards the courtyard. Children's ideas cannot be changed easily, you don't need to feel burdened. Jinan comforted him. I understand, but Doflamingo's ideas are a bit extreme. I'm a little worried. Jinan stopped in front of a lush tree. What you need to worry about first is your identity. Identity? Homing Holy was puzzled. Since you came from Mary Gosa, then I want to ask you, how did you treat slaves before? I didn't have much need for slaves, usually just to have them clean and tidy things. Jinan was genuinely surprised at this moment. Could this celestial dragon in front of him be a fake? Then do you know what other celestial dragons are like? Well, I've heard that they make the slaves compete against each other, and only leave the strongest one in the end. In the eyes of ordinary people, you celestial dragons are executioners. Although I know you are a bit different, all the people in this world who have been hurt by celestial dragons won't think that way. As long as they know you are a celestial dragon, they will do anything to kill you. Homing Holy involuntarily took 2 steps back, almost falling to the ground. If that's the case, will my wife and children lose their lives because of my decision? But the humans I expected were noble and great. Jinan shattered his illusion. Humans are actually impulsive and irrational. Driven by anger, they can make decisions that are completely different from what they would normally do. Then Homing Holy could no longer hold on and fell to the ground. Do you want to join us? That way you can protect your family. Jinan extended his hand to Homing Holy. This was Jinan's purpose, to bring a former celestial dragon into his team, let him see the most real side of this world, and let him understand that the lives of ordinary people are not easy. If it could develop into a former celestial dragon leading ordinary people to rebel against the celestial dragons, then it would mean that this world is still savable. Task completed. Progress, target's favorability, heartfelt submission. Reward has been delivered, please check. Buru Buru. Buru Buru. Report. Monkey D. Dragon's warship has entered the port. He came so quickly, Jinan looked up at Doflamingo in the room. It seems like I can take them to do something interesting. Chapter 32. As Monkey D. Dragon walked out of the ship's cabin, he saw the bustling city of the Sorbet Kingdom. He rubbed his head, which was tired from the long journey, and then looked back at the cabin. Sorry for making you bring us, Dragon, a gentle voice sounded from inside the cabin. Then, a woman with tea-colored hair walked out of the cabin with a child in her arms, her face full of smiles. Dragon said sternly, we're going to the same destination anyway, it's no trouble. Dragon and the woman got off the warship, and then followed the information to walk through the bustling streets, heading directly to the naval base. There were many shops on both sides of the street, and many of the things they saw were for the first time, but they didn't stop. These things weren't too attractive to them. After crossing several streets, a much more luxurious naval base appeared before them. The number of Marines on the street was also significantly higher, but most of them were walking in a hurry. From time to time, gazes lingered on Dragon, mostly from young girls, and occasionally there were giggles, full of youth and vitality. It could be seen that even in the economically prosperous Sorbet Kingdom, there were not many men as handsome as Dragon. Dragon didn't care much about the gazes cast at him. He kept a cold face from beginning to end, his black eyes like a deep abyss. Although he was not very old, he had the appearance of an old soul. Dragon, there are quite a few young girls looking at you with interesting eyes, Zephyr's wife said with a chuckle, covering her mouth with one hand. Hearing this, Dragon's expression tightened a little, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. I'm still young. Hee, I'm just kidding, look at your reaction, the woman laughed directly, disregarding her image. Sometimes Dragon really wanted to cry. His elders were all unreliable, and they didn't look like they were supposed to at their age. Suddenly, there was a commotion on the street ahead, and people scattered in all directions. A group of soldiers in armor marched in formation towards the port. The armed forces of this country are not bad, but why are people so afraid of them? Dragon felt that there must be something fishy about this. You must be from out of town, a sweet-looking girl next to him noticed Dragon's confusion and lowered her voice. This is actually a traditional performance of the current king, you don't need to take it to heart. Can you tell me what's going on? Zephyr's wife's curiosity was piqued. The girl looked around and, seeing that no one was paying attention, explained to Dragon and the others, in the past 2 years, with Colonel Yin's governance, the sea has been much calmer, and people have become more and more admired and respected Colonel Yin. Well, I've always heard that Yin is loved and respected, I didn't expect him to do so well, this should be a win-win for your country, Dragon nodded, very much agreeing with Yin's approach. You're wrong about that. Maybe the king feels his authority is threatened, so he's increased a lot of unnecessary drills, the girl sighed. This is just gods fighting and mortals suffering. The king wants to show his people that his army can also protect the country, but people are very resentful of the king's actions. This has had a serious impact on their lives, but they don't dare to speak out. This king is too much. Dragon said angrily, isn't there anyone to take care of him? The girl looked at Dragon with a "are you stupid" expression. What's wrong? Am I wrong? Dragon was a little confused. Zephyr's wife looked at the young man who had been focusing on catching pirates. Dragon, who do you think has the greatest power in a country? Of course it's the kin, G. Dragon blurted out. The girl spread her hands, look, don't you know? I, you, he. Dragon was dumbfounded by his own stupidity. How can this king be so outrageous? He's simply inhuman. Colonel Yin also personally went to communicate with the king face to face, but unfortunately, in the end, nothing could be changed. The girl felt a little better when she talked about Yin. The king manages all the affairs of the country, and no one can object. The navy is only responsible for maintaining security and has no right to question the king. The king can even order the navy of his country to work for him. But it's okay, this kind of thing is rare to see once a year. What's wrong with this old emperor? It hasn't been long since the last time. The girl had a good attitude and was only slightly dissatisfied with her current life. Dragon pursed his lips slightly. If someone familiar was next to him and saw Dragon's action, they would know that he was angry. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. Be careful to avoid the king's soldiers. The girl saw that the soldiers had disappeared, so she said goodbye to Dragon and left. Zephyr's wife looked at Dragon calmly. Don't you feel it's absurd that just because of a decision of the king, people can only silently endure those things that could have been avoided? There are many things like this in this world. While focusing on catching pirates, you can also take a look at what this world is like. Carp has always protected his son very well, so Dragon's experience is still too little. Maybe Carp discovered this, so Dragon is here now. Let's go see what Yin, who has always been praised by Carp, looks like, the woman said as she walked forward with the child in her arms. Dragon felt a sense of powerlessness as a marine for the first time, and he began to doubt the justice he had always believed in. Navy. Navy. Dragon was lost in thought, his feet moving lightly to keep up with the woman's pace. In the lobby on the first floor of the naval base, the staff in charge of receiving guests looked helpless. Every time someone looked for Colonel Yin, he was never there. We have already called Colonel Yin to inform him, the receptionist estimated the time. We can only ask you to wait a little longer. He has gone to deal with some matters and will need some time to return. You guys go ahead, we'll just wait here. Zephyr's wife didn't mind. She knew that the closer you were to the grassroots, the more things there were to do and the busier you would be. Originally, she didn't need to wait here with Dragon, but after what happened just now, she was still very curious about what kind of person Yin was. Kid, you better be honest with me. Do you think you are still that high and mighty world noble? Under my hands, if it's a dragon, it coils for me, if it's a tiger, it crouches for me. If you give me any more attitude, be careful I'll spank you. Under the gaze of everyone, Doflamingo was dragged to the naval base by Yin, who was holding him by the collar. Chapter 33. Put me down. No one has ever dared to treat me like this. The little boy frantically waved his arms, trying to break free from the large hand's grip, his face twisted and contorted with anger. Complying readily, Jinan released his hold on the collar. You little brat, speaking to me in that tone? Be careful, or I'll really beat you up. Ah! My butt! The little boy clutched his buttocks, now feeling like 8 separate pieces, and rolled around on the ground. Seeing Doflamingo writhing on the ground as if he were dying, Jinan slowly squatted down and took out a den mushi. This kid's reaction was a bit much. Suddenly, a playful glint flashed in Jinan's eyes. Since you're not afraid of embarrassment, then I'll make sure to record this scene. Maybe it'll add a little fun in the future. This kid has now become his disciple, and to be honest, Jinan was still a bit unwilling. Doflamingo was a ruthless character who disregarded human life at the age of 8 and dared to kill his own father at 10. Taking on such a disciple, Jinan was afraid of being backstabbed. What are you doing? Seeing the den mushi in Jinan's hand, Doflamingo stopped rolling and struggled to get up, clutching his butt. Jinan stuffed the den mushi into his pocket, recording a beautiful moment. Doflamingo glared angrily at Jinan. Although this person seemed harmless and easy to get along with, actually interacting with him made you feel like he wasn't a good person. He had only cursed a few times, but he was being dealt with in various ways. Just now, he had been dragged by his collar in front of so many people. Just thinking about it made his face feel like it was on fire. He also had his pride, okay. And this person seemed to have some dissatisfaction with his glasses, staring at them the whole time. He thought he looked handsome wearing glasses. Thinking of this, the vigilance in Doflamingo's eyes seemed to deepen, as if the person in front of him was his mortal enemy. You brought me here, what is your purpose? Why didn't you bring my brother here? Hearing Doflamingo's repeated questioning, the idle Jinan also came back to his senses, looking at the angry boy. Having been influenced by the celestial dragons for so long, even these children were full of an aloof mentality, not taking anyone seriously. If this habit were to be stripped away in a short period of time, it would cause even greater changes to their already incomplete worldview. Perhaps it would develop in a good direction, but more likely, it would become even worse. So bad that the evil in their hearts would be infinitely magnified, until it devoured their hearts and affected innocent people. From what Jinan knew, Doflamingo was clearly the second type of person. The reason he wore glasses was also to conceal the desires and violence within. The current Doflamingo had not experienced the suffering after his identity as a celestial dragon was exposed. At most, he looked down on civilians and had not yet developed a mindset of destroying everything. Thinking of this, when he looked at Doflamingo again, Jinan put on a warm smile again and said, "From now on, you'll follow me. I'll tell you to go east, and you can't go west. Your next task is to learn to obey orders." Looking at the smiling Jinan, Doflamingo didn't know why his body suddenly felt cold, but he was still not convinced. The eyes under his sunglasses stared intently at Jinan. "A mere colonel isn't worthy of me obeying. The lowest rank I used to have around me was a rear admiral. My status and position are not something you can casually order around. Although my father took us away from Marie Joyce, we are still noble celestial dragons." He possessed an extraordinary confidence, a confidence that had accompanied him for 8 years, and he still had it today. Celestial dragons are so powerful. Jinan sneered and brought his mouth close to Doflamingo's ear, whispering like a demon. "They're just a bunch of pigs raised in Marie Joyce, eating and sleeping, sleeping and eating, useless trash that only gains weight, eating the benefits brought by their predecessors, doing things worse than animals. Do you really think this identity is so noble? There are plenty of people in this world who can silently erase someone's existence. So why can't that person be a celestial dragon?" All along, the celestial dragons had called themselves descendants of the creators. Many celestial dragons even disdained to breathe the same air as ordinary people because they considered themselves noble, ruling this world for 800 years. But is it right just because it's always been that way? Jinan thought it was completely absurd. Practice is the sole criterion for testing truth, and strength is the stepping stone to verify this process. So, kid, don't take yourself too seriously. Take a good look at yourself. Doflamingo had long been frightened by what Jinan had said. He couldn't believe that someone would view celestial dragons like that. He couldn't believe that the identity he had always been proud of was worthless in the other person's eyes. He couldn't believe that there wasn't a trace of emotion in this person's eyes. He was serious. "Okay, I won't scare you." Jinan retracted his expression. "But there's one thing I need to tell you. The celestial dragons no longer recognize your status as celestial dragons, from the moment you left Marie Joyce." In Doflamingo's horrified gaze, Jinan continued, "Even if you kill your father who caused this situation, you won't get anything. Oh, except for the ridicule of those high and mighty celestial dragons." Jinan looked at Doflamingo, who was staring blankly at him, and then said, "Get up. From now on, follow me. I'll give you what the celestial dragons can't give you: power, freedom, strength. Anything you want can be achieved. And I advise you, your family is the most precious thing you have. If you lose them, you will definitely regret it." Speaking of this, a trace of loneliness flashed in Jinan's eyes. He had already lost his family forever, from the moment he came to this world. Just as Jinan finished speaking, a hurried voice came from behind him. "Boss, you're finally back. The guest has been waiting for you inside for a while." The receptionist saw Jinan outside the door and shouted loudly. Jinan slapped his forehead. He was so focused on educating the child that he had completely forgotten about Dragon and the others. Now it really did seem like he was being impolite. "Hearing about you is not as good as meeting you. In the naval base, Dragon slowly revealed his figure. Nice to meet you, I'm Monkey D. Dragon. Dragon's figure was burly, his height already reaching around 200 centimeters. Jinan standing in front of him was like a child who hadn't grown up yet. But in terms of aura, Jinan steadily overwhelmed Dragon. Nice to meet you. Chapter 34. As Jinan's voice rang out, a woman in a pink dress walked out of the house holding a child. The woman's face was filled with a bright smile, giving people a feeling of being bathed in the spring breeze, and she could bring a lot of goodwill with just one glance. The child in her arms didn't cry or fuss, but looked at the world with a smile, as if he was very interested in everything. The woman nodded lightly to Jinan, her etiquette was impeccable. Hello, I am Zephyr's wife. I have always heard Zephyr talk about you. I am finally fortunate enough to meet you today. Not at all, I have always admired Admiral Zephyr and you. When I go to Marineford in the future, I will definitely prepare a gift to visit you. Zephyr and his wife have made great contributions to the Navy, and many people in the Navy respect them very much, and Jinan is no exception. However, Jinan is not ready to go to Marineford yet, who knows what trouble he might encounter if he goes. Then it's settled, Zephyr and I are looking forward to you going to Marineford. She could see that Dragon had something to say to Jinan, and she might make him feel embarrassed if she continued to stay here. Then I'll leave first, you and Dragon have a good chat. She didn't stay any longer, and after saying hello to them, she chose to leave. He looked back and gently looked at the child in his arms. You must become a man like them in the future. So, next, what do you want to say to me? Jinan took a sip of the tea in his cup and slowly asked Dragon, who had a cold face opposite him. There were only two of them in the room, giving them a space to be alone. Dragon kept silent, so Jinan had to speak first. My old man asked me to learn something from you, but I don't feel like there's anything to learn from you. Dragon looked down on the person in front of him. Everyone here respects him so much, but in Dragon's eyes, Jinan is clearly the kind of parasite who doesn't do anything, doesn't go out, and only knows how to enjoy himself. In your eyes, who is qualified to teach you? Jinan was not angry and continued to rock the chair. Dragon said in a muffled voice, at least not someone like you. Originally, in his opinion, someone who could be praised by Sengoku, Zephyr, and his own father would be a heroic man, or at least someone who worked hard to make a career. But after he actually met him, he found that this guy was just an ordinary colonel stationed in the South Sea who was slacking off, and even before that, this guy's rank was not as high as his. Jinan looked at Dragon. Kid, you are a typical example of someone who has never been beaten. How can you directly say that we are not suitable when we meet? You should at least be a little more euphemistic. I didn't really want to agree to this matter either. If you don't want me to teach you, I'll be happy to be idle. Jinan yawned. It doesn't matter if there is one more or one less tool person. Dragon couldn't stand Jinan's lazy appearance. Can you do something beneficial to the civilians? Jinan turned his head and said with a smile, then I have to listen to your brilliant ideas. You seem to have not been here for a long time. What makes you think you know me well enough? Dragon stuck his neck out. What he had seen and heard along the way showed that the people here were not living so well. His living environment since he was a child was much better than here. Everything my eyes see can prove it. Then I hope your eyes won't deceive you, you can leave. Since they didn't agree, Jinan waved his hand and told him to leave. He had nothing to say to this kind of self-righteous kid. Since he believed in his own judgment so much, then it would be good to be self-taught. Dragon slammed the door and left. He couldn't understand why the Navy headquarters would let this kind of person manage a sea area. Were they afraid that the people here would live too well? As the door closed, Dragon stood blankly at the door. He knew that his actions were a bit extreme, but when he thought of Jinan's inaction, he couldn't keep calm. Any decision made by those in power will lead to extreme changes in the lives of the people at the bottom. What a bastard! He gritted his teeth and punched the wall, wanting to leave directly and tell his father what he had seen and heard, but he still hesitated. Colonel Monkey D. Dragon, right? Kuzan adjusted his glasses and asked Dragon, who looked unhappy. Although Dragon was in a bad mood, he still patiently nodded, that's right, I am. I'm Kuzan. Kuzan invited, I see you seem a little depressed, do you want to go for a walk with me? Seeing the navy of this base, Dragon, who was upset, felt unspeakable uncomfortable, and had no mood to take a walk with a stranger. Kuzan did not give up, rubbed his curly hair, and looked at the young man who was not much older than himself with flickering eyes. Don't refuse first, I'm also trying to save our colonel's reputation. Dragon sneered, reputation? Does this guy have a reputation? Believe it or not, it's a good choice to relax anyway. Kuzan spread his hands. Walking out of the naval base, the streets in front of him were still bustling with traffic. The street vendors started shouting again, pedestrians were in a constant stream, and laughter continued. Just as Dragon sighed at the ruthlessness of the world, Dragon felt his right shoulder being patted. It wasn't so lively here before. I've been following Colonel Jinan and watching this street gradually become what it is today. Kuzan sighed, his eyes full of memories. Dragon didn't believe it. Such a prosperous street was only built in the past few years? No one would believe it. Seeing the distrust in Dragon's eyes, Kuzan didn't explain too much, let's go further. Big brother. A girl with a face full of surprise ran towards Dragon's place with a smile. Do you know each other? Kuzan asked strangely. I met him once just now. The little girl answered a lot of my questions. Dragon said with some emotion, it was also through her words that I understood the situation on this island. Jinan is a hypocrite in my opinion. Dragon said firmly. He looked at the naval base in the distance that was much taller than all the buildings. This was his first impression of Jinan. Just as Dragon wanted to list Jinan's crimes one by one, an angry word exploded in Dragon's ears, making him a little at a loss. You are a bad person, how can you say bad things about brother Jinan? The girl said, tears streaming down her face, half of the people on our island were saved by brother Jinan. If you want to scold him, I will be the first to disagree. Dragon was flustered by the sudden sobbing. He didn't know what he had done wrong. What did the girl think of Jinan? What happened on this island before? We are abandoned people, people abandoned by the king. The king was ready to let us fend for ourselves. He wanted to abandon us ordinary people and only protect those who had money. It was brother Jinan who negotiated with the king that we have our current life. The girl told everything she knew. In order to pay the celestial tribute, the kings of this world raise funds through different methods. King Pekali of the Sorbet Kingdom wanted to divide the country in half to reduce the tribute of the celestial tribute. One half was protected by the country, and the other half was reduced to a lawless place. At that time, Jinan's strength and status were not enough, so he could only use various methods to reach a certain understanding with the king, forming the current situation. Otherwise we would either starve to death or be killed by pirates. Dragon was dumbfounded after hearing this, then he didn't expect it to be like this. His pride made him take it for granted that Jinan was letting the king bully the civilians. As a result, the girl's words made him understand how foolish his preconceived notions were. He was a little afraid to look at the faces of the people around him. He was afraid that he would be ridiculed and harshly criticized. Looking at Dragon's constantly changing expression, Kuzan felt a little joy in his heart. He didn't want his idol to be misunderstood, and neither did the people from the headquarters. No. I have to go back again. After struggling, Dragon still chose to follow his heart. He had to admit that he had done something wrong. This was the rule he had always followed. Chapter 35. Watching Long push open the door and enter, Jinan was somewhat surprised. From the first time Jinan met Long, he felt that this guy was the kind of person who was extremely arrogant, and it was generally impossible to change his personality. Having arrogance is a good thing, but it also has its disadvantages. This kind of person believes in themselves too much and has absolute confidence in what they do, making it easy for them to not listen to the suggestions of those around them. Just like when he establishes the self-defense army in the future, he could have secretly developed it with the backing of the navy, but because he couldn't stand the navy's actions, he rebelled in a fit of anger. I'm here to apologize to you. Long lowered his proud head. Oh. Jinan looked at Long with interest. It was rare to see him so humble. I didn't expect you to do so much for this island, and I just saw some things and had a bad impression of you. I reflect, I apologize, and I won't make judgments so easily like this in the future. Admitting and correcting mistakes is already better than what many people do. Long is indeed impeccable in these aspects. I think what you said earlier was right. I did ignore some of the king's actions, Jinan said. Long raised his head and looked at Jinan in confusion. As you know, the world government doesn't allow us navy to interfere in other countries' internal affairs. After all, they provide the military expenses, so we still have to respect the rules a bit. And the king is just venting his emotions, and what he does doesn't have much impact on the people, so I don't care about it. He's not a god, capable of managing everything. Even if he manages everything perfectly, what will happen to the people here after he leaves? It's better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. Seeing that Long still couldn't understand, Jinan continued. The king can decide the rise and fall of a country. As far as I'm concerned, although the current king is narrow-minded, he still cares about the people. His existence is beneficial to everyone. As long as he doesn't cross the red line, let him do whatever he wants. In a stable environment, people will only be content with the status quo, and by applying a little pressure, outstanding individuals will constantly emerge. Long seemed to understand a little. Everything revolves around balance, so much so that all parties have defaulted to this state. No, I think balance is just the most opportunistic choice. Long suddenly raised his head, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He clenched his fist tightly. The justice I believe in is not like this. To put it nicely, it's balance, to put it bluntly, it's compromise. The Navy has entrusted you with protecting the entire South Sea. Your strength should be pretty good, right? A hint of competitiveness appeared on Long's face. I'd like to learn from Colonel Jinan's skills and see if you live up to your name. Ha 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 ha, I just sparred with Garp earlier and haven't had enough fun yet. I accept your invitation. Hearing Long's request, Jinan laughed heartily. He couldn't beat Garp, but he couldn't beat you? Jinan was very confident in his own strength. Sorbet Kingdom Branch. Training ground. Come on, Long, you go first. Let me see what you're made of, being taught by Garp all the time. Jinan said lightly, giving Long the opportunity to strike first. Long is completely a genius, and a hard-working genius at that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have reached the rank of colonel at such a young age. Another typical characteristic of a genius is that they like to be troublemakers. To deal with this kind of person who likes to cause trouble, you need to subdue him first, so he won't like to cause you trouble. Long is still too young at this time, without the maturity and wisdom he will have after leaving the Navy. Now he is just rushing forward with a surge of passion. In his opinion, Jinan was being arrogant and didn't take him seriously at all. He had been fearless since he was a child, so how could he endure this? He will make Jinan regret looking down on him. Long took a deep breath, then closed his eyes slightly. After a moment, he opened them again, and regained his usual calmness. He looked at Jinan and said lightly, I won't hold back. This time, I will have a good spar with you. Feel free to attack. A smile also appeared on Jinan's face, and he nodded slightly. As Jinan's words fell, Long's expression became more and more serious. The wind was spinning around him, wrapping his whole body, and gradually spreading outward. As expected, it's a power related to wind. Seeing Long using his power, Jinan became interested. He didn't expect Long to have eaten a devil fruit already. This is more interesting. In between words, Long's footsteps suddenly stepped out extremely quickly. His hands, at this moment, bent into a strange arc, and his 10 fingers were joined together, like the claws of a dragon. With the increase of wind power, there was even a sound of breaking wind. Dragon Claw Fist, Sabo's famous stunt many years later. Even the hard armor of Blackbeard's subordinates can be easily crushed. It's not strange that Long is using it now. Long has obviously practiced this move for a long time, so when he shoots, it is difficult to figure out the trajectory of his arms when he waves them. Since going out to sea to hunt pirates, Long has understood a truth: you must not be contemptuous when fighting anyone, so as soon as he makes a move, he uses his best move. The power and momentum of the Dragon Claw Fist can indeed be called perfect in the eyes of others. Faced with Long's fierce offensive, Jinan's expression did not change, and he was still so understated. He didn't have any idea of taking a big move head-on. In the world of martial arts, speed is the only thing that can't be broken. As long as he can't hit him, then even the most powerful skills are just flashy. With a slight thought, Jinan stepped forward, leaving an afterimage in place, and his figure was already 10 meters away. Rumble! Dust flew up on the training ground, and Long inserted a claw into the soil, with a slightly surprised expression. Long boy, I'm behind you. Jinan's voice rang in Long's ear. Turning his head, he saw Jinan's palms clasped together, his posture instantly opened, his palms waving, and a fierce wind swept over, shaking all the nearby sand and dust away. In a panic, Long immediately fought back with the Dragon Claw Fist. Bang! The sharp attacks collided directly in the next moment, and violent fluctuations spread out. The attacks of the two intertwined quickly in a state that was too fast to cover their ears, and muffled noises kept ringing on the training ground. The sound of the fight inevitably attracted some people to come and check. Under the gaze of those many curious eyes, figures on the training ground were interlaced, coming and going, fighting quite fiercely. Wow, fighting so fiercely! Looking at the two figures fighting on the field, many people couldn't help but exclaim. Is this guy's physique so strong? While waving the dragon claw fist, Long's face changed again and again. He didn't expect that even if he was in an extremely serious state, he would not be able to cause any damage to Jinan. Moreover, when the two attacked each other, he always felt that the other party was deliberately observing his moves, as if he was understanding his routines. I can't continue to stalemate. Chapter 36. Dragon's eyes narrowed, and he immediately covered his palms with domineering aura. He stepped quickly on the ground, then transformed into the wind, shooting out like a sharp sword, instantly closing in on Jin's body. Then, the corner of his mouth rose, and in the next moment, he changed his attack method, using both hands and feet to unleash powerful force simultaneously, his attacks falling on Jin's entire body like a storm. Dragon's sudden and fierce offensive had no effect on Jin, as if those attacks didn't exist, allowing them to land on his body. Then, he clenched his palm into a fist and threw an ordinary punch, directly hitting Dragon's chest, sending him flying. Dragon touched his violently aching chest, his face a little pale, panting heavily. As expected, elemental transformation is useless in front of a master. Immediately afterward, he turned into a gust of green wind and blew towards Jin. Pretty durable. Jin shook his hand. He felt that every time his fist hit Dragon, it would inexplicably slide to the side, as if he was hitting flowing air. The feeling was exceptionally bad, and there was no pleasure of a solid hit. Clap clap clap. The fierce confrontation continued, with the two sides exchanging punches and palm strikes endlessly. Their clothes had long since turned into fragments in the battle, drifting away with the wind. Pfft! Another head-on collision. Dragon staggered back a few steps in the air, relying on stepping on the breeze to stop his body from retreating. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his eyes flashing as he looked at Jin. He had used all his skills, but the other party was still standing in place, without moving at all. All right, I've almost figured out your strength. Jin said loudly, you can go off the field and rest. After speaking, Jin didn't wait for Dragon to react, and jumped to a high altitude with a moon step, then fell down suddenly. Let me show you this palm technique from the sky. Dragon felt a strong threat approaching him, so he decided to use all his strength to meet it. Suddenly, a strong wind rose, and the wind rolled up sand, gravel, broken branches and other debris, surging into the sky. It's useless. Under Jin's palm, the strong wind suddenly collapsed, and the branches and dust all shattered and scattered on the ground. A slap hit Dragon's head. You lost. Under the winter sunshine, the training ground and its surroundings fell into silence. Gazes filled with deep joy stared at the two people in the center of the training ground. They, the onlookers, had expected this outcome. Their Colonel Jin had never been defeated by his peers. I actually lost. Dragon lay on the training ground, his palm placed in front of his eyes to block the annoying sunlight. This was the first time he had failed since he was born, and it was a complete defeat. This first time in his life was really not something to be happy about. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the side mission, defeat the wielder of the raging wind. Ding! You have gained the approval of Monkey D. Dragon. Ding! Monkey D. Dragon's favorability towards you has increased, please continue to work hard. Mission reward, training space usage time plus 36 hours, belly 20 million, information on a disappearing island, auction invitation card. Jin? Standing on the field, joy comes from the sky. The training time continues to increase, which is enough for him to cultivate for a while, and these belly are just better than nothing to him. This money is just a string of numbers in his eyes. What really makes him curious are the latter two rewards. The disappearing island is the one that someone reported earlier, right? It is specially used as a reward, which means that the island should have some unknown secrets. As for the invitation, he needs to find a place where no one is around to study it carefully. Jin glanced at Dragon, thinking that this guy with thick eyebrows actually likes this kind of thing. It was useless to reason with him for a long time, but after a beating, he became honest instead. Jin looked down at Dragon lying on the ground, with that elusive smile still on his face. It's really troublesome, as expected of someone who grew up under the training of those old guys at the headquarters. Devil fruits are not something that ordinary people can get, and dragon's fruit is even rarer, so envious. And I also have to thank you for the rewards you brought me. Dragon laughed self-deprecatingly, only taking Jin's reward to be the joy after victory. What about the headquarters, what about the 4 seas, haven't I still been defeated by you? Can I ask you, why are you so strong? Dragon moved away the palm blocking his eyes, and became strongly curious about the person who defeated him. Losing is losing, he just needs to improve himself, and then catch up with his pace, so that he can be satisfied. Hearing Dragon's words, Jin also asked himself this question in his heart, is it luck, is it hard work, is it the life and death struggle in the training space every time? He smiled and did not answer directly. Strong? I don't think so, there are too many strong people in this world. Edward Newgate, Gold Roger, Shiki the Golden Lion, the 5 Elders, any of these people can easily defeat him, and his goal has always been these people. Next, you should take a good rest, maybe I will have fun things to call you for later. Jin turned around and walked towards the office, he still has a pile of training to complete. You just came here, it's normal if you don't understand Jin. Kuzan sighed, I've been by his side for so long, and I haven't seen him exercise much, but every time I see him, I can feel that he has become a lot stronger. Maybe this is a genius, oh no. A monster. When I first met him, I could still go 3 or 7 with him, but now, it's all tears to talk about it. Hearing Kuzan say this, Dragon didn't feel any better, but felt even more pain. Damn! An invitation to a human auction house. Holding the reward issued by the system, Jin directly cursed, what's the use of this thing for him? The auction house is still on the Sabayati archipelago, which is hundreds of thousands of miles away. This thing is like waste paper, and he can't possibly buy a living person back. On second thought, the Sabayati archipelago is a resort, and it seems good to go there for a trip. But Kuzan's level is a bit difficult to pass, that guy probably won't let him get his way. Kuzan, who was dealing with the mess on the training ground, sneezed, alas! I'm so difficult. No, without conditions, we must create conditions to go. Looking at the invitation, a sly smile appeared on the corner of Jin's mouth, we also need to bring a few people with us. There will definitely be a lot of interesting things happening at the once-a-month event. Chapter 37. The next morning. Newsbirds carrying newspapers flew over every inhabited island. Celestial Dragon Don Quixote Homing and his family have relinquished their status and become commoners. The world government hereby announces that their life and death are no longer the responsibility of the government. Charlotte Linlin and Kaido have joined forces in the New World, conquering several islands and causing widespread devastation. People are fleeing in droves, and this newspaper will continue to follow the situation. Edward Newgate welcomes his 4th son. The party on the ship lasted all night, and guests didn't begin to leave until dawn. Rear Admiral Jinan of the South Blue has left the Sorbet Kingdom alone to continue hunting pirates. Hero Garp returns to his hometown in the East Blue, and pirates along the way tremble at the news. Inside a magnificent hall, people jostled, creating a cacophony of noise. In the dim light of the auction house, people wore gorgeous clothes and various jewels, flaunting their wealth. Thank you for waiting, everyone. A man in a black suit said passionately in his opening remarks, the monthly routine number 1 GR human auction will begin shortly. Our wonderful host will of course be the walking auction house Mr. Disco. Amidst the flashing lights of the auction house, a man in flamboyant attire walked with exaggerated steps to the center of the auction stage. His expression was as exaggerated as a dramatic work of art, every line on his face fully acting out the extremes of emotion. This time, we have also prepared many high-quality slaves for everyone. Modais waved the hammer in his hand, you are all very lucky. This time, there are also super hot items. I sincerely hope that you can buy satisfactory slaves. Behind the auction stage, slaves were imprisoned in different cells in groups of 3 or 5, and expressions of despair were deeply etched on their faces. Their eyes were empty and powerless, and the chains and shackles on their bodies seemed to be their eternal bonds. They could not hide the fear and helplessness in their hearts. Why did he bring us to this place? The disguised Doflamingo felt uncomfortable all over, twisting his body, trying to get rid of the dirty clothes. Stop struggling, you can't escape from this place. Dragon glanced at the child beside him, looking at the iron chains on his body. For him, this was a novel experience. He was usually respected, and he was the one who put chains on criminals, but now it was his turn. He leaned comfortably against the wall. We'll know where he is later. Let's just wait for now. This is something we couldn't have come into contact with before. This is the darkness of this world, and everyone present contributed to this human tragedy. That's right, Dragon and Doflamingo were sold by Jinan to the Sabayati archipelago. After Dragon finished speaking, he closed his eyes and quietly listened to the crying coming from the neighboring cell. In the center of the auction house, nobles sat in comfortable seats, raised their wine glasses with elegant gestures, gently sipped their wine, and looked forward to the entrance of the auction items while chatting. What do you want to buy this time? The human slave I bought last time died in less than 10 days, so if possible today, I would like to buy a young and strong fish man. I want to buy 2 or 3 young and beautiful women to feast my eyes on. What kind of women will appear? I'm really looking forward to it. Ha 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 ha. For them, this was not only an auction but also a sophisticated social event. They enjoyed the excitement and joy brought by the bidding. Looking at the increasingly heated atmosphere around him, Modais laughed loudly. As the chief auctioneer, his years of experience had made him understand how much wealth his talent could bring. He moved his gaze away from the faces of the people, laughed loudly, clapped his hands, and said with a smile, "Everyone, I also know the purpose of your trip, so this auction will directly bring out the items at the bottom of the box." As he spoke, Modais waved his hand, and the lights on the stage dimmed immediately. Soon, under the spotlight, 2 guards walked up, leading a man with a collar around his neck. Modais took the loudspeaker and began to introduce the product. Product number 1 is from the North Blue. He can cook and do housework. He has an outstandingly handsome appearance that everyone loves. He can meet all your needs. A strong and energetic 22-year-old man. Let's start the bidding from 300,000 berries. Please raise your paddles to bid. Modais on the stage, with a beaming smile, directly asked for a high price, setting the price of this person at a relatively high level. What beasts! Jinan sat in the VIP seat watching this farce, a cold smile appearing on the corner of his mouth. It is said that there would be no killing without buying and selling, but in Jinan's eyes, being killed directly was already a good ending for the slaves. He was just afraid that they would be worse off than dead after being bought. Looking at the male slave on the stage, the eyes of the people below clearly did not change much, obviously not interested in this man. Being watched by everyone, the man twisted his body uncomfortably, his heart filled with despair. Once the transaction was successful, his life and death would be completely in the hands of others. Since no one wants him, then this person is mine. The person holding paddle number 87 raised the paddle above his head, 300,000 berries. After shouting the price, this noble also looked around, preparing to see if anyone would compete with him. Modais' eyes flashed, and he gave the bidder a contemptuous smile, evaluating him as a low class, but maintained a perfect smile on his face. He shouted loudly, "Guest number 87 has bid 300,000 berries, will anyone continue to bid?" After a slight silence in the audience, a few more people continued to raise the price. Listening to the constantly increasing prices, the person who made the initial offer was surprised and a little annoyed. Finally, when the price rose to 520,000 berries, he could no longer raise the idea of competing. For the first product, most people did not bid and chose to continue to wait and see. They all understood that the quality of the products would be higher as it went on. And those with fewer berries also seized this opportunity and began to raise the price on the previous products, wanting to buy relatively good slaves with the least amount of money. After all, participating in this kind of large auction might allow them to meet some people with higher status. After the auction lasted for 30 minutes, 14 slaves had been sold, and the next products were all heavyweight. Get ready, bring out product number 16. As soon as product number 15 is successfully traded, put it on stage immediately. Kid, get up quickly, perform well next, and try to be sold for a good price. A guard grabbed Doflamingo's clothes and threw him out of the cell. And you have feet, get out quickly, be careful I beat you to death if you don't move. Dragon restrained his murderous heart, took the initiative to climb up, and walked towards the auction stage. Chapter 38. With the sound of iron chains scraping against the floor, Dragon and Doflamingo were shoved onto the auction stage. A group of greedy and ruthless buyers were commenting on every aspect of their bodies, while they themselves stood on the stage like merchandise to be manipulated. Doflamingo's unease, which had been brewing since he was in the prison, reached its peak upon stepping onto the stage. Seeing the gazes of the surrounding people, he felt a sense of helplessness and anger engulfing his heart. His heart pounded as if it would leap out of his chest, and his throat was blocked by an unspeakable fear, making it almost impossible to breathe. He tried to remain calm, but the fear within him surged like a tide, unstoppable. Dragon, on the other hand, was as expressionless as ever, as if he were not merchandise on the stage, but a king inspecting his territory. The collar around his neck was something he could easily remove at any time, so his mindset was very different from Doflamingo's. He wanted to leave, and no one here could stop him. A fervent atmosphere permeated the auction house, an aura woven from money, power, and greed. Doflamingo's gaze swept across the faces of the buyers, seeing their cold expressions and the desire for young slaves gleaming in their eyes. Some wore smiles, as if viewing a valuable work of art, while others had sharp eyes, staring at them like hungry wolves. He was afraid. The gazes of these people made him physically uncomfortable. He wondered if he had looked at ordinary people with the same eyes before. Next up is product number 16, a strong young man from the South Sea, capable of easily moving an entire warehouse of goods without showing fatigue. Not only can he be used as a beast of burden, but also as a punching bag, and he comes with a handsome boy. Ha 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 ha. The people in the auction seats burst into laughter. So, what will be the starting price? Modise observed the expressions of the people in attendance. He slammed the hammer on the table. Starting bid is 30 million berries, let the bidding begin. As they were announced for sale by the auctioneer, an uproar immediately erupted in the crowd. Some discussed among themselves, others consulted with those beside them about how much to bid later, while some remained silent, but the greed in their eyes could not be concealed. Doflamingo felt more and more like a commodity, placed in a window to be displayed and bid on by everyone. Damn it, am I only worth 30 million berries? What an insult! Dragon felt insulted by their starting price. No, Dragon looked at the trembling kid beside him. He wasn't even worth 30 million berries. A breeze swept through the hall, but after Dragon calmed down, it quickly returned to stillness. Sitting in the auction seats, Jinan watched the two on the auction stage with interest, accompanied by the constantly rising bidding prices. Dragon is quite popular with noble women. No wonder almost all the bidders around him were women. It seemed his disguise was quite popular with these people. 45 million. 45 million and one. The auction process felt like a terrifying dream. Doflamingo fell into a despair he couldn't escape. He had never yearned for freedom so much, yearned to break free from constraints, but in this cold and ruthless auction house, he could only watch himself being stripped away bit by bit, being sold off bit by bit, until he finally fell into the hands of a stranger, his fate once again controlled by others. 50 million. The shouts of bids rose and fell in the hall. Jinan twitched the corner of his mouth. A price of 50 million was not a small sum. After all, he was the one who let the two of them be auctioned off. The best solution was still to pay for them himself. Modise shouted loudly, 51 million, 51 million, is there anyone bidding higher than this? Seeing that it was about time, Jinan slowly raised the sign in his hand, 51 million and one. The corner of his eye twitched. Modise, with his sunglasses on, glanced at Jinan, looked around, and found that the bidders all had difficult expressions, and knew that this price was the highest. So he repeated the price 3 times, and finally the matter was settled. Congratulations to VIP number 888 for successfully bidding on a product to his liking. Seeing that the person who bought him was Jinan, Doflamingo breathed a sigh of relief. The heart he had been holding finally fell. He never wanted to suffer this kind of crime again. Dragon glanced at Jinan, feeling a little sullen. In the end, a Marine headquarters colonel plus a little brat only sold for 50.01 million. Dragon and Doflamingo were taken down to await delivery after the auction ended, or for the buyer to pick them up in person. And now, the auction is still going on. The prices these people shouted out were getting more and more outrageous, and Jinan got more and more excited. In fact, Jinan didn't want to pay to buy them, robbing them directly was more cost-effective, but if he wanted to rob them, he needed to wait until the auction was over, when there would be fewer people, making it easier to do. Anyway, he couldn't stand these auction houses treating living people as commodities. Human traffickers should all die, and the people running the auction houses should also die. If he didn't lack the capital to contend with the world government, he would have torn this place down by now. Alas! It seems like I'm going home empty-handed again this time. Isn't there still no mermaid that I've been looking forward to the most? I've been looking forward to it for a long time. Don't even mention mermaids, even fishmen are rare goods. You have to rely on luck to see one. The real VIPs of the auction house, although filled with desires for slave commodities, were not satisfied with the current products, because what they craved were higher quality slaves, preferably some special races. The previous commodities were relatively monotonous, only slaves with strong bodies for hard labor, or some slaves with special skills, such as those skilled in cooking or proficient in music. But commodities that could make their eyes light up had not yet appeared. However, despite the guests' dissatisfaction with the current slave commodities, they were still full of expectations for the upcoming slaves. They expected that in the upcoming auction, there would be more ideal slaves appearing, able to meet their needs and desires. Therefore, they chose to continue staying in the auction house, waiting for the appearance of the next auction item, hoping to find a slave that suited their tastes. For them, slaves were not only labor, but also a symbol of status, capable of bringing endless comfort and enjoyment. How ugly! Jinan sat in the auction house, always feeling out of place here. Jinan's eyes wandered over everyone in the auction house. There were kings, nobles, rich men, and he even saw a celestial dragon in a separate area. Celestial dragons were not just rich, robbing one was estimated to be worth the wealth of everyone here combined. Chapter 39. Dragon and Doflamingo's shackles had been unlocked, and they were quietly standing beside Jinan. Jinan had asked the auction house manager to release them in advance, otherwise they would have had to continue suffering in the prison cells. How are you two feeling? Jinan asked leisurely, taking a sip of cola. Doflamingo didn't quite dare to look at Jinan, but the rising hatred in his heart filled him, his loathing for this world and his dissatisfaction with Jinan wanting to turn into a raging fire, destroying everything. He was a noble Don Quixote, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? But he didn't dare to show his dissatisfaction with Jinan. He knew the other party wouldn't care about his identity, and could kill him, a former celestial dragon, with just a flick of a finger. Jinan naturally sensed Doflamingo's hatred, but he didn't care. Would an elephant care about an ant? To him, Doflamingo wasn't much stronger than an ant. These slave traders all deserve to die. Dragon said in a deep voice. To see such outrageous things happening right in front of him, he had completely lost patience with these scumbags. You only see the slave traders, but don't think about who is behind them, supporting them. Those people are no better than the slave traders, Jinan said indifferently. Dragon's pupils constricted slightly. You mean? There's a marine base on this island, do you really think they don't know anything? Jinan swirled the cola in his glass, looking at the sky obscured by the auction house through the glass. Dragon's life before this could be described as smooth sailing. Before coming here, he had no understanding of slave auctions, let alone the shady dealings between the marines and the auction houses. Suddenly hearing about these things had a violent impact on his heart. Dragon's time seemed to stop, standing there at a loss, unable to say a word. He was completely stunned. Today's experience was completely different from the justice that Garp had always taught him. What's so surprising about this? Doflamingo spoke, breaking the strange atmosphere. These things are all carried out with the secret support of the world government. The Marines can only choose to turn a blind eye. I even saw someone unexpected just now. Look, that person is sitting openly in the Celestial Dragon's exclusive area. You couldn't have missed him, right? Dragon swallowed hard. Celestial dragons were also involved. Let's go. While the auction is still a while from ending, I'll take you to do something big. Jinan finished the cola in his glass in one gulp. He had wanted to do this for a long time, and now the time was just right. Not far from them, some nobles were already starting to receive their spoils with smiles. These spoils not only gave them slaves to dispose of at will, but also represented their financial strength being at the top level in the auction house. Dragon and Doflamingo simultaneously looked at where Jinan's gaze was. The things he was talking about were these slaves. What's the point of some slaves? Doflamingo curled his lip. Not just slaves, everything here, all belongs to me. Jinan made a hugging motion. In his Kanbunchoku perception, the auction house's underground warehouse was also filled with gold, silver, jewelry, and calligraphy. With his strength, he could be said to be a god-slayer and Buddha-slayer in the Sabayati archipelago. Nothing could threaten him, so why not just go wild? Moreover, his Kanbunchoku was enough to cover the entire Sabayati archipelago, and he could leave instantly if there were any sudden situations. The auctioneer on stage was still introducing the items to be auctioned with an exaggerated expression. His eyes under the sunglasses were devoid of emotion, his eyes only filled with the desire for money. These desires drove him to perform laughable acts, completely disregarding the despair of the slaves. Dragon felt the flames of his anger reignite, his hands clenched into fists, knuckles protruding, veins bulging, his anger at the auctioneer and dissatisfaction with the auction house reaching its peak. Suddenly, Jinan shouted loudly, his voice resounding throughout the hall. "You can end your exaggerated performance," Jinan said indifferently, "those of you who have nothing to do can leave here, I'm in a good mood today, and only targeting the auction house, if I accidentally hurt you, then I can only say sorry." His words caused everyone in the hall to stop talking, and they all cast surprised and angry glances. They were very angry that their interest had been suddenly interrupted. "This guest, please sit down, we can still treat your offensive behavior just now as a joke, but if you don't know what's good for you, don't blame us for being ruthless," the auction house employee said with a fake smile on his face. Jinan directly slapped the person in front of him away, and looked at the people in the auction house. "Good, good, good. I find that you really suit my taste now." Doflamingo's mouth was almost grinning to his ears. Revenge doesn't wait overnight, he was looking forward to the development of things next. There was an uproar in the auction house, some were surprised, some were disdainful, but everyone expressed dissatisfaction with his behavior. But Jinan remained unmoved, quietly watching the clownish behavior of these people jumping up and down. "I'll only count to 3, you are responsible for the consequences of not leaving." 3. "Ha ha ha, you really think you're something, I'm the king of the Lasso Kingdom, how dare you threaten me?" 2. "Don't count down, we can't leave here. Aren't you people ashamed of your behavior? Do you only have fame and fortune in your hearts, and not even the most basic humanity and conscience?" Seeing that no one was leaving, Dragon couldn't help it, and said loudly. His voice was full of grief and indignation, wanting to awaken the conscience of these people. But he was disappointed. Most of the people in the auction house didn't care about Dragon's words. How much was humanity worth? Since they were sitting here, it meant that those things had long been abandoned. Power and status were their symbols. "Ha ha ha, isn't this the little brat who was just bought? It seems your master didn't keep an eye on you, or should I discipline you for your master? A slave is still putting on airs, I can kill you with a mouthful of spit, how dare you bark in front of me, you're really tired of living." The auction house was full of abuse, these people were very dissatisfied with Dragon's behavior. How pathetic! Dragon gently closed his eyes, not knowing whether he was talking about the people in front of him, or this damn world, or the high and mighty world government. They soon wouldn't be able to scold any more. Jinan and the others instantly appeared in front of the slave traders. That person also saw Jinan's intention, and quickly reached out to block, while calling out to the others, "Brothers, since he doesn't want to save face, then beat him to death for me. Do it." The security guards surrounded them instantly. These people were veterans in the auction house, carrying sticks they ran over directly. To them, they had killed at least 50 or 100 people who caused trouble. Their every move revealed their pursuit of money, and they didn't put human life in their eyes at all. In their eyes, people who caused trouble were walking money. They could catch the people who caused trouble and auction them off directly here, and the money they got would naturally go into their pockets. Dragon felt the greed in these people's eyes, and a trace of disgust flashed in his eyes. "Let's go together." He strode firmly towards the crowd. He had no pity for these people in his heart, wantonly venting the anger he had accumulated during this period on these people. Chapter 40. The noble's sneers and disdain tightened his fists, and anger burned in Dragon's chest. He knew the filth of this place, the tragic fate of those innocents. The slaves here were not willing to sell themselves, but they were still stripped of all dignity and even life. They were born as human beings, not for you to enslave. Dragon's voice was full of anger and determination, his words piercing the hearts of the slaves in the back like a sharp sword. Speaking for slaves was something they only dared to dream about, so many burst into tears when they heard Dragon's words. "What are you crying for? You don't actually think they can take you out of here, do you? Don't dream." A guard mocked. The slaves didn't have much hope, but they vented their suppressed feelings. Although they didn't have hope, their eyes still revealed anger at their experiences, as well as faith and admiration for Jin and the others. As the nobles began to laugh and provoke, Doflamingo's face became even more gloomy. His hands clenched into fists, his body tensed, ready to face any possible challenge, while his eyes flashed with a burning light, as if he wanted to grind those nobles to ashes. I kindly reminded you, but since you don't want to leave, I won't bother with you. Jin's hair and clothes moved without wind, and although the voice was not loud, it clearly rang in everyone's ears. The faces of some nobles changed. They seemed unable to afford to offend someone who could do such a thing, and they immediately felt like retreating. But suddenly, a roar rang out, and Modais led his men forward, breaking the silence of the auction house. He had long been unable to bear these three troublemakers who were ruining his money-making plan. Now that he had enough manpower, he didn't have to endure it any longer. They were fully armed, their weapons were equipped with the greatest possible lethality, their movements were agile and powerful, and they rushed forward, yelling and waving knives and guns. Bang! Continuous gunshots rang out, and several of Modai's men attacked Jin and the others without hesitation. The anger burning in Dragon's heart was ignited by the gunshots, and he was determined to let everyone here know that the evil act of participating in the slave trade would be punished. These people at the auction house were okay at suppressing ordinary slaves, but how could they be a match for Jin and the others? For a time, screams of pain kept ringing out. In the blink of an eye, the group of people who had been so aggressive just now all fell to the ground, lifeless. Modais was forced to retreat, cold sweat dripping from his forehead, and he became more and more anxious. These useless navy bastards! I give them so much money every year, and now they can't even protect my safety. Boss, I've already told them, but they said it will take some time to get here, his subordinate said anxiously, covered in sweat. He hadn't finished spending the money he earned, so he couldn't die here. Useless, all useless, always dropping the ball at critical moments. He gritted his teeth, watching his profits rapidly disappear amidst Jin and the others' destruction. Although his men continued to join the ranks of the suppression, they were still completely unable to subdue the momentum of the riot. The scene was already filled with the screams and curses of the nobles. They fled in panic, pushing each other towards the exit. Those three people were too terrifying. So many people were killed in an instant, and even slave traders who knelt down to beg for mercy were not spared. They killed without mercy. Bang! A gunshot rang out in the panicked crowd. Humble commoners, get out of the way, make way, the esteemed celestial dragon is leaving here. The guards protecting the celestial dragon shouted loudly. They were scared to death. They originally thought it was just a simple escort mission. They didn't expect to encounter such a thing. They couldn't let the celestial dragon get into trouble, otherwise, they and their families would die miserably. Why should we leave here? Isn't it more interesting to continue watching them kill each other? The celestial dragon was very interested in the mutual killing between humans and didn't want to leave here. Saint Rosward, let's go back to Mary Gosa and watch these things. The performance here is not interesting, the chief guard breathed a sigh of relief, suppressing the urge to just pick up the celestial dragon and run. They stayed with the celestial dragons all the time, and they knew what they were thinking. They were not afraid of anything and did not worry about encountering danger, because when they were threatened, the Navy's top combat power would rush here directly. This was one of the reasons why these celestial dragons were so confident. The celestial dragon was not afraid, but the guards were afraid. No one knew what they would do after those people went berserk. Are you teaching me what to do? The celestial dragon directly took out a gun and looked at the guard. CP2, hidden in the dark, appeared in front of the guard. With us here, no one can get close to this place. Surround St. Rosward and form a protective circle, and be careful not to let anyone get close to ensure that they will not be affected here. Although they were confident in their strength, in order to ensure nothing went wrong, they chose to take extra precautions. After all, the scene here was too chaotic, and if something unexpected happened, no one could protect him. Jin, not far away, naturally saw every move of the celestial dragon. As expected, he was a pig, rushing to join in the fun when he encountered something dangerous. I'll leave the small fries here to you, Jin slapped away someone who approached him and walked towards the back alone. Seriously, you're making us do all the hard work again. Doflamingo pulled the trigger and shot the enemy. The corners of his mouth turned up. Although he was complaining, he liked this feeling of invincibility. In the midst of the chaos and fierce fighting, Dragon's heart was filled with anger. After hearing Jin's words, he just nodded silently. He had a belief in justice and a desire to protect the weak. His actions were not only to rescue the enslaved people, but also to defend his inner beliefs and expectations for the world. Jin went to the back alone. In the chaotic auction house, he walked through the crowd openly. The guards tried their best to stop him, but they were useless against Jin. It didn't take long for him to reach the back area. With a bang, Jin pushed open the tightly closed prison. The room was dark and damp, and the air was filled with an unpleasant smell. He frowned, a little unaccustomed to it. Ew! This environment is too bad. He shook his head and continued to walk forward. Here, he found a group of imprisoned slaves. The eyes of those people were full of surprise. Although they tried their best to calm their violently beating hearts, the excitement on their faces could not be concealed. They recognized the voice of the person in front of them. You are free. Jin kicked open the tightly closed prison door. Remember to line up, and I will unlock the collars around your necks. The people in the prison looked at what was happening in disbelief. It wasn't until Jin went to the next prison that someone woke up from a dream and cried bitterly. Everything was so real that they couldn't believe it. We are free. After cheering, the slaves rushed out of the prison in a swarm and lined up. Although they were out of prison, the collars around their necks were the real threat to their lives. Walking to the last room, there were still slaves imprisoned inside, but one of them caught Jin's attention. Chapter 41. Among a group of slaves dressed in gorgeous attire, a beautiful woman stood out exceptionally. She was confined in a glass sphere filled with water, her fair skin shimmering, a soft blue silk fabric adorning her head, her limpid eyes filled with sorrow, and a slender tail gently swaying, clearly a mermaid. Jin An's heart jolted, but he quickly calmed down. He hadn't expected to actually see a mermaid at this auction. He thoughtfully observed the scene before him. So, the celestial dragon outside came here after receiving news of a mermaid? The mermaid was constantly restrained, her eyes revealing a yearning for freedom and helplessness, but Jinan didn't linger his gaze on the beautiful mermaid. After shattering the glass dome with a finger pistol, he opened the cells indiscriminately. Then he left, as he still had to unlock the restraints of these people. Without the constraints of the glass dome, the mermaid took a deep breath of air. Although the air was foul, she relished it. Swimming freely in the water, she supported herself with her hands, her tail gracefully slicing through the water, leaving the water surface she was once unable to escape, breaking free and heading towards freedom. The mermaid gratefully gazed at Jinan, expressing her gratitude in a silent way. Jinan felt a sense of satisfaction from doing a good deed. He always acted according to his own ideas, and he would do anything as long as it made him feel content. He released these slaves simply because he wanted them to live freely and choose their own lives. As for their safety after being released, Jinan couldn't take responsibility for that. You're so weak, obediently go behind me. But. No buts, obediently give me your spot. Otherwise, I'll break your legs. The order of the line was the order of having their collars removed. To escape the threat to their lives as soon as possible, many people began to have wicked thoughts. Hearing the discordant voices coming from the line, Jin An's brow instantly furrowed. He couldn't say he didn't understand these people's thoughts, but understanding didn't mean agreeing. He remembered this troublemaker and those who had similar ideas. The person behind pulled the girl who was cut in line, signaling her to endure it. Don't provoke him, we can't fight him. We were all captured here, why is he still bullying people like this? The girl was puzzled. They were all in the same boat, yet before they even escaped this den of demons, they were already starting to bully each other. This world doesn't care about misery, loves company. To survive, people here are capable of anything. Little girl, I've remembered you. Wait until we get out, you just wait. Under Jin An's gaze, the man left a harsh remark and scurried to the back of the line. What you did was dangerous, remember. Run as soon as you get out, that person definitely holds a grudge against you, the person behind the girl reminded her. The girl stood there blankly. She didn't know what she had done wrong. Her father had always told her to be polite and obey the law since she was a child. She had always done so, but why was she captured here? Why was that person so fierce? Why? Jinan began to remove the restraints of these people. The design of these collars wasn't complex. After studying the ones on Long and the others' necks, he had already mastered the key points. Although there seemed to be many people here, after getting familiar with it, it didn't take much time to finish. Those who had their collars removed stayed where they were. It wasn't that they didn't want to leave, but they didn't know the situation outside and were afraid to go. You can leave, Jinan continued to do what he was doing. There were only a few people left, and he would be done soon. But, the guards outside. As for the guards, they're all gone. In the perception of his observation Haki, there were very few people in the auction house who still had a life force. A slightly bolder person cautiously walked out of the area where the slaves were imprisoned. After discovering there was no danger, they quickly ran out. 2 minutes later, that person ran back, the excited expression on their face impossible to hide. "Everyone, we can leave, the guards outside are all gone." Those who were still hesitant didn't say anything more after hearing the man's words and ran straight towards the exit, afraid that if they were too slow, something unexpected would happen. After everyone had run out, Jinan looked at the last person in front of him. "You're the last one. Be careful after you get out, don't get caught by slave traders again. May I ask, can you tell me, what is your name?" The mermaid who remained at the end looked at the person who saved her, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Afraid that the other party might have some concerns, she continued to add, "My name is Serena, and I run a coffee shop on Fishman Island. Do you know what it means that I wrecked this auction house?" Jinan asked in return. Serena thought for a moment and replied, "You will become a thorn in the side of the auction house and their backers." Jinan rolled his eyes and joked, "Knowing that, you still ask for my name, do you want to use my name to exchange for money?" Serena was so anxious that tears were about to come out, and she said somewhat aggrieved, I didn't mean that, I just really want to know your name." This man saved her life and also left a deep mark in her heart. Although they might never meet again in the future, knowing his name would at least let her know who saved her. Jinan looked at the beautiful mermaid in front of him and sighed inwardly. He didn't expect that after saving so many people, she was the only one left who wanted to ask for his name. Jinan said his name. Although mermaids hated humans, they were extremely concerned with credibility, so there was nothing wrong with saying his real name. Moreover, he had a certain fondness for mermaids who ran coffee shops. The people on Fishman Island 20 years later gave Jinan a good impression, being loyal, righteous, and helpful. And that shop owner, like the woman in front of him, was a great white shark mermaid. Perhaps they were relatives. Maybe if he passed by Fishman Island in the future, he could get Sherry to give him a free fortune-telling. Unfortunately, Sherry didn't seem to be born yet, otherwise it wouldn't be bad to go to Fishman Island now. "I will definitely remember your life-saving grace for the rest of my life. If you come to Fishman Island, please be sure to look for me at the coffee shop, I will do my best as a host." Serena bowed to Jinan, then leaned forward, resting her head on Jinan's lap, waiting for him to remove her shackles. Jinan saw the position of the collar clearly and skillfully removed the collar from Serena's neck, then coughed lightly. "So fast." Serena blushed slightly and gently moved her head away. Jinan touched his nose, "The air here is not good, let's go out first." "You go out first," Serena looked at her tail, "I'll go out later." Jinan also realized that it was very inconvenient for mermaids to move on land, but it was not safe to leave her alone here. "Let me take you out," helping people all the way, Jinan gritted his teeth and squatted down directly to ask Serena. Serena opened her arms and wrapped them around Jinan's neck, her body curled up in his arms. She let out a soft whisper, as faint as a mosquito's hum. Please." Chapter 42. Am I seeing things? Doflamingo rubbed his eyes. How come that guy went out and came back with a woman in his arms? Dragon opened his mouth wide, could that be a mermaid? He had never seen a mermaid in his life. The first time he saw one, it was being held in Jinan's arms. Mermaids are born very beautiful and are often targeted by traffickers. Fishmen are also favored by slave owners because of their strong bodies, which makes it difficult to reconcile the relationship between the mermaid race, the fishman race, and humans. This makes it difficult to see them in densely populated areas. A hero saves the beauty. The two said in unison. Dragon looked at Doflamingo and suddenly asked, I heard that the celestial dragons have the wealth of the world, but how come you look like you've never seen a mermaid before? Doflamingo. The celestial dragon, who had stayed behind to watch the excitement, was about to leave. After all, the fun here was over, and there was no point in staying any longer. Mermaid, it's a mermaid. But just as he reached the exit, he happened to see the mermaid in Jinan's arms and immediately shouted. Others didn't know, but his status naturally meant he knew what the most attractive slave at this auction was. In order to make money, someone revealed that there would be a mermaid for sale at this auction, but he had forgotten about it while watching the excitement just now. Now that he had seen his target, he naturally chose to snatch her away. You, go and bring that mermaid over to me. Rosward Saint pointed his fat finger at the mermaid in Jin An's arms and ordered. Also, kill that man directly. I don't like garbage touching my possessions. Rosward Saint felt very uncomfortable seeing the man holding the mermaid. Coupled with the frustrating things he had encountered at the auction, he was now very angry. To him, mermaids were his toys. How dare a lowly commoner reach out and touch the gods' private property? This was disrespect to the gods. Damn it! Rosward Saint, with his blonde hair, scolded imperiously. CP2 naturally had no objections. They were originally tasked with absolute obedience to the celestial dragons. Upon hearing the order, they immediately rushed out. What are you looking at? All of you, get over there too. Rosward Saint pointed at the noses of the guards beside him and cursed. The guards hesitated. Their job was to protect the celestial dragon's safety even if it meant dying. But Lord Rosward Saint, if we all leave, what about your safety? Rosward Saint smiled confidently, there are only us and those 3 lowly commoners here. They should be the ones worrying. I am a world noble, a celestial dragon. In a bad mood, he kicked the guard in front of him to the ground and signaled the others to quickly do what he had ordered. As subordinates of the celestial dragons, they were a group of cruel and ruthless people. In their eyes, there was only power and loyalty, and they didn't bother with nameless people like Jinan. Since it's your order, we will definitely obey. These guards ultimately chose to obey the celestial dragon's order and immediately took action. The people near the celestial dragon seemed to be attacking Jin An. Dragon was a little anxious. The celestial dragons had control over the navy, and he was worried that Jinan would be treated badly. Doflamingo looked on with a gloating expression, looks like he's in trouble. Being targeted by those pigs is not a good thing. Now, in his eyes, the identity of the celestial dragons had no appeal. What he wanted was to surpass those pigs who only knew how to eat, drink, and play, to trample them under his feet, and to humiliate them wantonly. Although Dragon didn't know Doflamingo's identity, he was still very curious about his attitude towards Jinan and the celestial dragons. Through this period of contact, he felt that this child seemed to have gone astray, acting like he feared nothing. Let's go and help Jin An. Seeing Jinan surrounded by those people, he wanted to join in the fun. Doflamingo reached out and stopped Dragon, we are slaves now. Slaves don't dare to displease the celestial dragons. Besides, don't you want to see Jin An's attitude towards the celestial dragons? Doflamingo's words echoed in Dragon's ears like the whispers of a demon. Did he want to know Jin An's attitude towards the celestial dragons? After thinking for a moment, Dragon concluded that he did. After this period of understanding, he realized even more what kind of bizarre existence the celestial dragons were. If he had to make a choice, he would definitely stand on the opposite side of the celestial dragons. As Jinan and the others were surrounded by the celestial dragon's subordinates, Serena realized that her existence might bring more danger to the protagonist. She knew that her beauty and race had always attracted the attention of the celestial dragons, so she decided to sacrifice herself to allow the protagonist to escape. Put me down and leave quickly. Serena whispered in Jin An's ear, they are only interested in me. Let go of me, and you can definitely escape. Jinan glanced at the mermaid in his arms, in your eyes, am I someone who is greedy for life and afraid of death? Of course not. Serena retorted, if you were that kind of person, I would still be in the prison waiting to be auctioned off. She glanced at the celestial dragon in the distance, then I will still fall into the hands of the celestial dragons in the end. I just don't want you to get hurt. You are the best human I have ever met in my life, no, not just among humans, you are the best person in the world. Since I dared to come here, I was naturally prepared for the worst. Jinan smiled slightly, with just these people, my safety won't be threatened. Just relax. I always do what I say, so just wait for me to take you to the beach. Jin An's words were full of determination and firmness. He would definitely do what he decided to do. Even Jesus couldn't change his mind. Serena felt the protagonist's firmness and warmth, and a warm current surged in her heart. In this treacherous world, she had finally found someone who was truly willing to give everything for her. She silently closed her eyes and snuggled deeply into the protagonist's arms, feeling the sense of security and protection he gave her. I'll listen to you. Just then, Jinan suddenly roared, his voice spreading throughout the auction house. Do you know who I am? I am the pirate with a bounty of 250 million berries, Jack. I am now the captain of the 6th ship of the Golden Lion's flying pirates. Have you thought about the price of attacking me? Everyone in the auction house stopped in their tracks, looking at the man holding the mermaid and rampaging in all directions with shocked expressions. Dragon and Doflamingo's jaws almost dropped to the ground. They had never seen such a brazen person as Jinan. The golden lion was sitting at home, and the pot was falling from the sky. Serena cutely raised her head, blinked her watery eyes, and happened to see the mischievous smile on Jinan's lips. He's so bad, but it feels pretty good. Chapter 43. Gold. Gold Lion. The Celestial Dragon's subordinates and CP2 knew the weight of this name very well. If they could, they definitely wouldn't want to get involved with that person. Gold Lion Shiki, the user of the float fruit, a floating human, capable of making himself or objects fly in the air, thus earning the nickname Flying Sky Pirate. Captain of the Flying Sky Pirates, Admiral of the Gold Lion Pirate Fleet, a great pirate who was once as famous as Gold Roger and Whitebeard Edward Newgate, and wielded the two famous swords Sakura Ten and Kara Ki. Because of his ability to fly, he can carry out various types of attacks, so many forces will not provoke him. They whispered to each other, unsure whether to become enemies with the man in front of them. All of you, attack. A mere gold lion can't threaten me. Saint Rosward was so angry that his nose was crooked when he saw his subordinates stop attacking. He didn't know who Gold Lion was, only that his parents had told him since he was a child that no one could threaten them, the celestial dragons. If anyone did, they should make that person disappear. TCH, all trash. He didn't expect these useless things, only good for guarding the house, to succeed anyway. There was still CP2 who could take action here, these guys were just for show. Saint Rosward's gaze remained fixed on Serena, the greed and possessiveness in his eyes making Serena feel uncomfortable all over, and she licked her lips subconsciously. Mine, all mine. Serena's pupil shrank, and she burrowed into Jinan's arms in fear, her body trembling uncontrollably. Jinan had an I knew it expression. The world noble celestial dragons had unparalleled rights in this world. If they gave up just because they heard a title, they wouldn't be them. If you're not afraid of death, then come at me. I don't care what your identity is. CP2 and the guards slowly approached Jinan, their eyes flashing fiercely. Bang! As their footsteps grew closer, in the next instant, the CP2 members launched their attacks almost simultaneously. Powerful strength gathered in their hands, and their palms, capable of splitting boulders, slammed towards Jinan's head. The CP0 members showed remarkable teamwork as soon as they attacked, directly blocking all of Jinan's escape routes, making it difficult to choose. Faced with these attacks, Jinan's expression remained unchanged. He directly protected Serena in his arms, preparing to withstand these attacks with his body. Don't mind me. Serena cried out hoarsely when she saw Jinan blocking the attacks for her with his body, her eyes turning red uncontrollably. Jinan glanced at her and muttered to himself, I can take these attacks head-on without any problem, but you might not be able to. Bang! The palms struck Jinan's body, and a deep, muffled sound echoed in the auction house. But at the moment the attack hit, the expressions on the faces of the CP2 members, who had been relaxed, changed slightly. The feedback from the other party's body shook their palms, making them ache faintly. And what shocked them the most was that the other party stood up straight, as if nothing had happened. This person is not easy to deal with. Don't hold back. From the contact just now, the CP2 members realized that Jinan's strength was much higher than theirs. However, it seemed that because he was holding someone, he couldn't actively counterattack them in a life and death struggle. Eat my club! A burly man wearing a mask, exuding a murderous aura, swung a thick wooden club, roaring towards Jinan, his eyes filled with fanaticism and violence, as if he wanted to crush Jinan into powder. Another man, holding a long sword, revealed a ruthless and decisive look in his cold eyes. He unhesitatingly launched a fierce attack on Jinan together with the club-wielding man. The two men's attacks approached Jinan almost instantly, carrying tremendous power, aimed directly at vital points, without any intention of holding back. At the same time, a masked man with a bizarre and agile figure, with cunning and sinister eyes, held a sharp dagger, his steps light, like a sly fox, quietly to the back of Jinan, seemingly wanting to give him a fatal blow. Faced with the three men's fierce and vicious attacks, Jinan stomped hard on the ground, his body instantly soaring into the sky, looking down at the three men from a high position. The three men's attacks missed, and they looked up in astonishment at the two figures in the air. They didn't see the other party's movements at all. But their astonishment didn't last long, and soon turned into painful howls. Ah! What did you do? The CP2 member's hand holding the weapon fell to the ground, and blood spurted from the severed arm, dyeing the surrounding area blood red. Jinan retracted his kicked-out leg. I thought you were having a hard time holding your weapons, and your foreheads were sweating, so I helped you lighten the load. How dare you? We are CP2. In order to avoid excessive blood loss, they covered their constantly bleeding severed arms and kept retreating. Seeing that the three men wanted to retreat, Jin An's eyes flashed, and he suddenly took 2 steps forward, his legs leaving the ground, kicking towards the 3 men's chests as fast as lightning. Bang! 3 humanoid holes appeared in 3 directions of the auction house wall, respectively, and the voices of the CP2 members became smaller and smaller until they disappeared. The other celestial dragon guards who were watching from the side also turned their heads when they heard the sound, and then saw the 3 large holes in the wall and the severed hands scattered all over the ground, with twitching corners of their mouths. Okay, it's your turn. Having solved the 3 pieces of trash, Jinan was in a good mood, and his eyes swept over the surrounding guards. One person single-handedly defeated 3 powerful CP0 members, beating them without any ability to fight back. The person in front of them was not someone that ordinary guards like them could deal with. Thinking of this, the guards regretted it so much that their intestines turned green, and they couldn't help but kneel down and beg for mercy. This person's strength made them unable to raise any thoughts of resistance. Die! You ignorant bastards! In the desperate eyes of these guards kneeling on the ground, Saint Rosward grinned and pulled the trigger. Bang! The muzzle spewed flames, the bullet cut through the air, leaving a beautiful trajectory in the air, and the auction house fell into dead silence. Everyone's eyes widened, staring at the bullets, as if time had frozen at this moment. Everyone in the auction house held their breath, watching to see if it would hit Jin An's body. Firing a cold shot. Under everyone's gaze, Jinan stretched out his hand, as if time had frozen at this moment. The guard's eyes widened, and they could almost hear their held breath. His fingers flicked lightly, as if plucking a string, accurately pinching the bullet that was shooting towards him, and then casually threw it on the ground. Catching a bullet with bare hands. The guards' faces were full of shock and despair. Their last hope was completely shattered. They once thought that this bullet would be a fatal weapon, but now it had become a fatal threat to themselves. The bullet was once their last hope, hoping to defeat the man holding the mermaid with this attack, but the reality was so cruel. They realized that this man not only possessed amazing strength and calmness, but also seemed to have superhuman mysterious power, which completely thwarted their plan. Jin An's eyes were still as calm as water. Is that all? Give me some more. I'm not satisfied yet. Chapter 44. Damn it! Who the hell are you? Saint Rosward's forehead bulged with veins, his face becoming grotesque and distorted, his heart filled with anger and fear, and unease quietly rising within him. The armed forces protecting his safety had long been kicked to who knows where, and now the only thing that could give him a sense of security was his celestial dragon status. Jinan put down Serena, reached out and picked his ear. Didn't I say I was under the command of Golden Lion, Jack? Have the celestial dragons been high above for too long, leading to the degeneration of their ears? Jin An's appearance was completely based on the image of Plague Queen of the Beasts pirates in the future, bald, sunglasses, with a golden braid hanging on his head. He slowly walked up to the celestial dragon, reached out and took off his glasses. His not-so-tall figure gave Saint Rosward a feeling of looking up to a high mountain, bringing him unparalleled pressure. He flicked his golden braid, condescendingly overlooking the celestial dragon in front of him. I'm asking you a question, celestial dragon sir. Saint Rosward couldn't withstand the pressure brought by the man in front of him, and subconsciously took a few steps back. He was stunned for a moment after hearing this, then straightened his body with a self-righteous air. He was a noble celestial dragon, and no one dared to lay a hand on him. You lowly commoner, what makes you dare to walk in front of me? He paused, putting on an arrogant expression. Disappear from my sight now. Noble celestial dragon sir, would you like to take a look at the environment here? Jinan raised an eyebrow. There aren't many people here, killing you is easier than killing a fish. Are you sure you want to talk to me in this tone? Jinan walked up to him, suddenly waved his hand, and slapped the glass cover to pieces, making intimate contact with the celestial dragon's greasy face. Ah! The celestial dragon flew backwards, clutching his face. You dare to hit me? You lowly commoner actually dares to hit me? I'll make you wish you were dead. The guards stared at Jinan with incredulous eyes, their eyes full of shock and fear, their mouths open wide enough to fit an egg, staring blankly at what had just happened, their eyes flashing with unease and fear, and the hearts that had been hanging in the air finally died. Dragon and Doflamingo also opened their mouths wide. One was a Marine headquarters officer and the other was a former Celestial Dragon, and both knew what would happen after hitting a Celestial Dragon. If I had known, I wouldn't have stopped you, maybe things wouldn't have developed like this. Although he said that, his excited expression clearly showed that he also wanted to go up and try a few punches. Dragon stood there in a daze. I can only say that he is worthy of being Jin An. Do you know what you've done? The guard asked in a trembling voice. Jinan took out a tissue and wiped his hands. Isn't it just hitting a pig? No. You don't understand the terror of the Celestial Dragons. You want the people on this island to die with you. The Marine Headquarters Admiral is coming. We are all sinners. We will all die. These words made everyone present feel a chill in their hearts, as if they were in the cold winter, and their bodies trembled uncontrollably. They all understood what the consequences of angering the Celestial Dragon would be, but they couldn't beat the man in front of them, so they could only grit their teeth. I'd like to see who has the ability to call the Marine Admiral here. Jin An's domineering aura enveloped the entire island. Your every move is being watched by me. Want to contact the Navy? I'd like to see if you can do it. As long as the phone can't reach the outside, who will know what's happening here? Will the Admiral be able to predict the future? Jinan kicked the guard next to him. Hurry up and serve your great Celestial Dragon. The guard buried his head between his legs. I dare not, please let me go, I will never do bad things again. The people here had all seen Jin An's great power. They were not old men who were tired of living, they could only obediently be ostriches, pretending to be deaf and mute. Hey, let me tell you one more time. Jinan slapped Saint Rosward, who was pretending to be unconscious. Awake, I'll take the mermaid over there. If you want revenge, I'll be waiting for you in the Flying Sky Pirates. Everything Golden Lion gave you, I can give you. Saint Rosward said unclearly, covering his swollen mouth, as long as you spare me, I can give you anything. He could only believe what Jinan said. With this person's lawless character, he might change his mind and kill him directly in the next moment. Although his brain was not good, he was not stupid enough. He just wanted to buy his life with money now. As long as he could return to Marie Joyce alive, he could continue to do whatever he wanted. As a world noble Celestial Dragon, he had enough money to easily buy a country, which also made him cherish his life. Otherwise, if he died, not only would the money not be spent, but it would also be divided up by other Celestial Dragons. I don't want your money. Jinan said with disgust. It's all dirty money squeezed from ordinary people, and he doesn't care about the little money he has. A trace of anger flashed in Saint Rosward's eyes, but he quickly concealed it. As long as you guarantee not to kill me, I can fulfill any wish you have. Jinan didn't look at him again. This stupid pig really didn't understand what he was saying, or he wanted to live too much. He had obviously been let go, and he was still babbling non-stop. I'll take you out first. Jinan picked up Serena in one hand. Serena looked at Jinan uneasily, leaned close to his ear and asked, Is it really okay? I'm afraid they will retaliate against you. It's okay, he won't dare to take any action before I leave this island. Jinan replied. Celestial Dragon sir, you and I have a life or death friendship. If you come to the Flying Sky Pirates in the future, I will definitely hold a grand welcome ceremony for you. Important things are said 3 times. Jinan smiled evilly and hugged Serena and left the auction house openly. That damn commoner! Saint Rosward cursed in a low voice. Celestial Dragon sir, do you seem to have something to look for me? Jinan poked his head out from the exit, looking at Saint Rosward calmly. No, nothing, I'm just saying goodbye to your departure. He gave a dry laugh and lowered his head. Then I'm really leaving this time, goodbye. Celestial Dragon sir, what do we do now? The guard asked cautiously. Saint Rosward gave that disgusting face a big slap. Damn beast, quickly take me back to Marie Joyce. Received. The person who was beaten did not dare to have the slightest dissatisfaction and replied with a smile. On the coast, the waves gently lapped the beach, the sun shone on the sea, shining on the two of them. They stood together, facing the upcoming farewell. I'll send you here, it's very safe here, you can safely return to Fishman Island. Jinan put Serena in a sparsely populated sea area. You have to remember, it's best not to come to land in the future, so as not to be caught by traffickers again. Serena was both happy and sad, tears flashing in her eyes, holding Jin An's hand tightly, as if wanting to freeze this moment forever. her lips trembling slightly, but unable to make a sound, only a silent sadness surging in her heart. Thousands of words were finally left with one sentence, "I know, you have to be careful too, the outside world is really different from what I imagined." She made up her mind that in addition to divination, she also had to learn a skill, so that she could protect herself and protect others. Then goodbye. Serena turned and plunged into the water, and after a while, her figure disappeared into the deep sea. Chapter 45. Yo! Is our colonel reluctant to see the beauty leave? Doflamingo's voice came from the bushes behind. Jinan rubbed his buzz cut. Don't talk nonsense, kid. The only reason he stood here was because, under the observation of Kanbuncho Kohaki, that celestial dragon had finally started to act. He also knew very well that Serena was only grateful to him, and he was just helping a girl with mobility issues, nothing big. I think you're just changing the subject. Doflamingo teased. He was in a very good mood now and had rediscovered the meaning of continuing to fight. Adults' affairs are not for children to participate in. Jinan looked behind him. Dragon, you and Doflamingo go for a walk around the island. There are still many interesting things to see on this island. He took Doflamingo's hand and handed him to Dragon. This guy has a strong ability to cause trouble, so you have to keep an eye on him. Doflamingo struggled in dissatisfaction. It was one thing to treat him like a child, but what did he mean by looking down on him so much? He had done a lot of big things in the auction house. I'm telling you, treating me like a child will cost you dearly. Of course, Jinan knew that at the age of 10, he could kill his own father to exchange for the status of a celestial dragon. Who would dare to underestimate him? Then I'll give you some things to do later. Dragon asked suspiciously, aren't you coming with us? I have an old friend on this island. Now that I'm here, I definitely have to meet him. It won't take long, I'll be right back. Also, I have some things to tell you. Jinan continued. Among the slaves released from the auction house just now, there are some pirates. You've all seen them when you were locked in the prison. Those people are all money. You catch those people and send them to the naval base here to exchange for some money, so they don't run out and cause trouble again. Even mosquitoes are meat, making money is not shameful. Moreover, Jinan didn't believe that these pirates would repent after being sold by human traffickers only once. Maybe they would become even worse after being stimulated by this incident. Many people's mentality is that since they have been rained on, they will tear down other people's houses. Remember to use the identity of a bounty hunter. If they directly used their navy identity, they wouldn't be able to explain their purpose for coming here, and they might not even get a bounty, which would be a huge loss. Jinan waved his hand and turned to walk into the island, leaving only a back view to the two. Could it be that he has a lover on this island? Running so fast. Dragon just twitched the corner of his mouth, obviously not interested in Doflamingo's joke. Hurry, we must return immediately. Saint Rosward felt unsafe as long as he stayed here, and he didn't want to stay here for a moment. This place had brought him unforgettable experiences and had worn away his pride as a celestial dragon, leaving only a belly full of anger. As his words fell, a guard lay on the ground waiting for the celestial dragon to ride on him. There was no way, the previous slaves had been killed, and this kind of work could only fall on them, the guards. Please, sir, sit on my back. He wanted to reduce the celestial dragon's hostility towards him through this method, so that he wouldn't be punished too badly when the time came. Do you need to notify the Navy headquarters? Do you think I'm not ashamed enough? What's the use of telling those useless navies now? That person doesn't know where he's gone. As for venting his anger on the people on this island? He did have this idea, but he would have to wait until he returned to Marie Joyce to discuss it in the long term. After all, this island could still bring some fun to the celestial dragons, and directly destroying it would not be in their interests. Saint Rosward sat directly on that person's back, covered his face with his sleeves, and proceeded towards the port under the escort of many guards. In the eyes covered by the sleeves was bottomless darkness. He would not let go of the man named Jack, nor that mermaid. He would let her know what fear is. Flying pirates, Golden Lion, Jack. Saint Rosward murmured, you guys remember, I will get my revenge. He looked indifferently at the guards around him. None of those who saw him in this miserable state would want to live. Enjoy these last moments. Finally, when he reached the end of the road, he looked back at the auction house that had humiliated him. Find CP2 for me, alive or dead. Jinan, hiding behind a civilian house, took in all of Saint Rosward's expressions. It could only be said that his nature was hard to change. Even after being taught a lesson like this, he was still incorrigible. Fortunately, he wasn't crazy enough to vent his anger on the people of this island, otherwise Jinan would have to find a way to avoid some risks. As for now, Jinan only needed to wait for him to leave this island. The navy serves the world government, and he is now a heinous pirate. And now he was going to see an acquaintance, wondering if there would be any surprises. 20 minutes later, Jinan arrived at his destination, leisurely strolling through the Yarikaman mangrove. A huge inconspicuous number was marked on the distant mangrove 13. Looking at the bubbles flying around, Jinan was amazed. Only in the Sabayati archipelago could you see this kind of scenery. Numbers 1 to 29 all belong to illegal areas. This is a paradise for criminals, and all kinds of illegal transactions can be carried out here. Looking into the distance, what came into view was a house with a round roof covered with moss. Above the door, a wooden plaque was engraved with the shop name Shakyaku's Rip-Off Bar. Knock knock knock. Jinan reached out and gently knocked on the door frame. The wind chime at the door gently swayed, making a pleasant sound. Inside the bar sat a woman exhaling smoke. It's not business hours yet, did you come to the wrong place, or can you bring me some other business? The woman made a somewhat lazy voice. Judging by the voice alone, one would think she was a gentle and kind older sister, but few of the people who open shops here are simple. Are you the only one here? Jinan found a seat and sat down on his own. Shakyaku's pupil shrank, took a puff of smoke, and said indifferently, I have always run this place alone. If you're just here for fun, I can only regretfully tell you that you've come to the wrong place. Jinan waved his hand. Don't be so nervous, it's okay if that person isn't here, anyway, I'm here to find you this time. Shakyaku became wary. What do you want from me? It can't be just to drink, right? I have some information to sell to you. Jinan drank some tea. Half an hour later, a ship carrying a whole ship of gold and silver jewelry will leave the waters west of the Sabayati archipelago. Shakyaku flicked the ashes off her cigarette with her finger. What does that have to do with me? Pirates are short of money, and I'm no exception, but I can't handle the guards on that ship by myself. So, you want to use me to reduce some of the pressure for you to rob the treasure? Shakyaku said disdainfully, why should I help you? We can make money together. Jinan put his hand on Shakyaku's shoulder. Shakyaku's eyes suddenly shrank. She was also someone who had been on Rock's ship. Even she couldn't see the other party's movements clearly, which was enough to prove that the person in front of her was not someone she could provoke. This person was not discussing with her, but a blatant threat. Isn't it easy for a master like you to rob a ship? Shakyaku looked at the hand on her shoulder. Are the people on that ship very strong? Or is their identity not simple? You don't need to worry about that, you just need to send this message out to those greedy pirates. The breeze rang the wind chimes, the man's words were still in her ears, but the person had disappeared. Shakyaku breathed a sigh of relief, her full chest rising and falling. You want to create a big incident, then I'll add fuel to the fire for you. Golden Lion seems to be nearby. With that guy's character of liking to join in the fun, he will definitely get involved. I hope you can make things bigger and burn yourself. Chapter 46. Proceed at top speed. I want to return as quickly as possible. Saint Lasgard, who had changed into a fresh set of clothes and a mask, walked up to the guard and commanded imperiously. We are already at top speed, Saint Lasgard, the guard replied, trembling. What's the situation with those three from CP2? Lasgard frowned. The guard seemed to think of something, shuddered, and said with difficulty, the bones of all the adults are broken. They might not be salvageable. Useless, all useless. 3 people against 1, and they end up like this. Can I entrust my safety to these good-for-nothings in the future? Saint Lasgard cursed, his mind filled with his own safety, completely disregarding the dying men. We have already contacted the Holy Land. The CP adults will come to meet us, the guard said, not daring to provoke him, and only telling him good news. Sure enough, Lasgard's face lit up when he heard these words. Good, good, good. Did you tell the Holy Land people about Jack? The guard found it difficult to fathom the celestial dragon's fickle mood and said happily, I told them. I heard that the 5 elders will personally look into this matter. You bastard, who told you to blabber everywhere? I can solve these things myself. Saint Lasgard glared and kicked the person to the ground. Seemingly not appeased, he kicked the person again and again. I dare not any more, please spare me, the man pleaded incessantly. But it was useless. On the contrary, his cries aroused Lasgard's interest, and he simply took out a whip and lashed out with great force. Before long, the person was silent, lying motionless on the deck. Interesting. Saint Lasgard suddenly laughed. He enjoyed the feeling of being high above, controlling the lives of others. Only in this way could he briefly forget what had happened before. Will you dare to make decisions for me in the future? The guards were stunned for a moment when they heard this, and then quickly knelt on the deck. As you know, we always listen to your words, always obey your orders, and dare not show the slightest disrespect. That person was acting smart. We are not really familiar with him. Lasgard's eyes were full of arrogance. This was the power given to him by his authority. The life and death of these people were at his whim. I like the look in your eyes. After saying this, he walked into his incomparably luxurious cabin. Unlike the cabins where the guards and CP lived, his place was decorated with all kinds of precious treasures, and the carpets were sewn from the furs of various exotic animals. More than a dozen boxes of various sizes were placed on the carpet. From the gaps in the boxes, it could be seen that they were filled with colorful jewels. Just a slight glimpse of them made the cabin extraordinarily luxurious. Lasgard took off his clothes and jumped, like a sow diving into water, onto the soft bed. Outside the cabin, on the deck. Phew! The guards all breathed a sigh of relief. This guy almost killed us all. Although they were all celestial dragon guards, their status was actually not much higher than that of slaves. Looking at the celestial dragon's tightly closed door, they all took out cigarettes from their pockets, lit them, and relieved their stress. They were all making a living as celestial dragon guards, and everyone wanted to climb up, but the consequences of failure were right in front of them. Although staying with the celestial dragons was dangerous, the benefits were also obvious. In the eyes of the celestial dragons, they were nothing, but in the eyes of ordinary people, they transformed into people who no one dared to offend. Moreover, as long as they figured out what the celestial dragons meant, they would not even be in danger. This was a privilege that could only be enjoyed by staying with the celestial dragons. Remember to pay attention to the surrounding environment. We are the only ones responsible for escorting him now. The CP big shots don't know when they will arrive. As long as we arrive in Mary Gosa safely, the rewards will definitely be generous. You're thinking too much. No one in this world dares to cause trouble for the celestial dragons. The man thought for a while and added, except for that madman before. Speaking of that madman, they found it strange. How dare that person? He even dared to hit a celestial dragon, and the strangest thing was that the celestial dragon actually endured it. Could it be that celestial dragons are also afraid? As soon as this thought appeared in their minds, it was thrown out. This kind of thing was impossible. Even Rox, who was delusional about dominating the world, had never attacked the celestial dragons. After 800 years of rule, the world government had established the authority of the celestial dragons in the hearts of everyone in this world, and no one could resist. Anyone who dares to face the authority of the celestial dragons is either about to go crazy, or is not from this world. Captain, I have cracked an encrypted message. Oh? Tell me about it. A blond man sat on a seat wrapped in animal skin, wiping the two knives in his arms. The message says that a ship loaded with gold and silver jewelry will pass by us. It seems to be money sent to Mary Gosa by a certain kingdom to bribe the celestial dragons, the crew member replied. In that case, the guards shouldn't be strong, right? Shiki became interested. This is a good thing. If it's not far from us, let's go straight there. But, I'm afraid this message is a trap. The crew member was obviously more rational. Afraid of what? Shiki sheathed his knives. I am Shiki, what if it's a trap? Just break through it directly. Wow! As expected of Boss Shiki. Majestic. Overbearing. The crew members cheered one after another. They had not tasted defeat since they formed the pirate crew. The money being transported to the celestial dragons, not the heavily guarded heavenly tribute, was enough for them to squander for a while. They could even take this opportunity to spread the fame of their pirate crew even further. Pirates with the same thoughts were all moving towards the same location, and they all had the same goal. Rumble. The waves on the sea became turbulent. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed, and the originally clear sky suddenly became cloudy. There seemed to be a behemoth rolling and swimming in the dark clouds. On the sea, the guards stopped their work and looked curiously into the distance. Their eyes were full of annoyance, and the sudden storm slowed down their progress. How can the weather change so quickly? The guards smiled wryly and sped up their movements. Stop complaining, control the direction, and continue working. In a corner they didn't notice, a man with golden braids silently observed their movements. Chapter 47. Amidst the deafening thunder, Jin slowly approached the ship's cabin. Saint Rosward jolted awake from his sleep, sitting up abruptly and clutching his chest, gasping for air. After resting for a moment, his previously unfocused pupils regained their clarity, and his pale complexion gradually flushed with color. Saint Rosward frowned, also hearing the thunderclaps in the sky. Just then, the tightly shut cabin door slowly creaked open. He turned his head, looking towards the cabin door with some annoyance, only to find the door still opening at a snail's pace. Can't even guard a door, are you looking for death? Close the door now. He began to shout even before the door was fully open. Gusts of wind poured in through the crack in the door, and Saint Rosward, having removed his outer coat, uncomfortably wrapped his arms around himself, shrinking back. In his agitated gaze, a foot clad in a leather shoe stepped into the cabin. You dog, who told you to come in? I told you to close the door, are you deaf? He shivered from the cold, wishing he could rush over and shut the door himself. The cabin was dim, with only faint light filtering through the gaps, casting mottled shadows at the entrance. Jin, like a dark shadow, silently entered the cabin, his eyes fixed on the front, watching the dumbfounded celestial dragon with interest. Saint Rosward saw the figure in front of him, his pupils dilated unnaturally, and he couldn't help but exclaim in shock as his mind raced, "It's you!" When the door opened, his angry expression instantly froze, his eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at the figure before him, his inner panic almost overflowing, his body trembling slightly, his fingers shaking uncontrollably. His eyes revealed a hint of fear and unease, knowing that he had no chance of winning against the person in front of him, and he didn't understand how this person had silently infiltrated his presence. At that moment, he felt his psychological defenses collapse in an instant, leaving behind a void of emptiness and helplessness. Where are my guards? What did you do to them? Jin raised a finger to his lips, signaling him to lower his voice. You clearly said you'd let me go. Saint Rosward roared, as if he hadn't seen Jin's gesture, you can't go back on your word. Looking at the celestial dragon yelling in front of him, Jin felt helpless. Sometimes he really wanted the power of the silence fruit, otherwise he would be very troubled every time he encountered such loud people, because it was really too hard on the ears. If I remember correctly, I only told you to leave the Sabayati archipelago as soon as possible, I never said I would let you go. As for your guards, they're all outside. Hearing Jin's words, Saint Rosward also saw the situation outside through the open cabin door. All those people were lying on the ground, and although there were no visible wounds on their bodies, they had no fighting power left. He was now truly, all alone. Saint Rosward looked at the man in front of him in disbelief. Why can't you let me go? Why was this guy targeting him? Why can't I let you go? I didn't expect you to ask such a question. Jin grinned, because I'm happy, because I'm stronger than you, because I can't suppress the urge to kill you. You actually have such thoughts. He opened his mouth wide, his face filled with disbelief. He couldn't understand if this person in front of him was crazy. He actually wanted to kill a celestial dragon, to kill the people at the very top of this world. He knew that their lives were more precious than anyone else in this world, no one could judge them, they were the gods of this world. They were a taboo of the sea, ordinary people didn't even dare to look at them directly. What kind of freak was this person? Are you satisfied with this answer? Jin asked, if you are, I'll send you on your way. Jin stood in the shadows of the room, his gaze cold and sharp, and through the dim light, a cruel smile flickered on his face. He casually split the door panel into long sticks, then forcefully inserted them into Saint Rosward's limbs. Saint Rosward was pinned to the bed, struggling, but every movement caused him to grit his teeth in pain, unable to escape, his eyes filled with fear and despair, knowing that he could no longer escape. Do you think you can escape? Jin's voice was cold and mocking, you're just a bug under my control, now, I'll let you taste the despair of those innocent people you've tortured. He slowly walked towards Saint Rosward, casually picking up a sharp knife, the blade gleaming eerily in the light. Jin's smile grew colder, he mercilessly slashed the knife across the other's skin, screams echoing in the room. He turned a deaf ear to the other's every plea, his heart as hard as stone. Do you think you can live well after killing me? Saint Rosward's voice was full of mockery. You're wrong, the world government will avenge me. You and your pirate crew can't escape. I won't let you go even if I die. I'm looking forward to them avenging you. Jin grinned. You seek revenge from Golden Lion, what does it have to do with me, the Governor General of the South Sea? Maybe he'll even celebrate the dogs biting each other then. You beast, I want you to wish you were dead. Vicious curses spewed out of the celestial dragon's mouth. Jin clicked his tongue in wonder, so they were afraid too, afraid of death. They will avenge me, your every move is in those people's eyes, they are already on their way here, I'll be waiting for you in hell, ha 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 ha. Jin cleanly slashed Saint Rosward's neck with a knife, his head instantly separated from his body, and his head was blown away by the surging blood, falling heavily to the ground. His face still had the expression before his death, confusion, anger, and doubt intertwined, forming an unusually ridiculous expression. Finally, the annoying wailing stopped, and only a terrifying silence remained in the room. Jin looked at the celestial dragon's unconscious body and smiled disdainfully. Of course he knew that there was a monitoring den mushy set up by the world government on this ship, so he had been maintaining his disguised appearance. When the time comes, he will let Kuzan and the others wipe out a pirate crew, and then report it to the Navy headquarters in his name, so that no one will associate what happened today with him. Celestial Dragon? Compared to lambs to be slaughtered, killing you doesn't take much effort. Men, the target ship is ahead, kill them, the treasures are ours. After the looting, we'll hold a banquet, everyone enjoy the revelry. In the distance, pirate ships were rapidly approaching the ship carrying the celestial dragon. The pirates' laughter gathered together, making this sea area lively again. Banquet. Charge. The show begins. Chapter 48. The pirate ship slowly approached the ship laden with gold and jewels as indicated in the information. Silence reigned on the ship, with only the sound of the sea breeze rustling through the sails. The pirates warily scanned their surroundings, vaguely sensing an ominous aura. When they boarded the ship, the scene before them shocked them. Guards were lying all over the deck, but without any signs of a struggle. It seemed very strange, as if these people couldn't even resist before falling to the ground. The pirates' expressions turned grave. They knew that something unusual had happened here. They remained vigilant and continued deeper inside. Deep in the ship's hold, they discovered a headless corpse. The cabin where the body lay was lavishly decorated, and any item taken from here would be enough to ensure a comfortable life. But they couldn't rejoice, the corpse sent chills down their spines. We've been tricked, Koki's voice was cold and angry. This isn't our target, someone set a trap. The pirates exchanged glances, anger and helplessness intertwined in their hearts. They realized they had become pawns on someone else's chessboard, and their momentary greed had led them into this deadly trap. But amidst their anger, a strong sense of revenge surged in the pirates' hearts. No one in this world doesn't hate the celestial dragons, they just don't dare to act. And now, a celestial dragon had died before them, how could they not be excited? While thrilled, they vowed never to let those treacherous enemies who framed them get away with it. They had to ensure that the culprit who made them take the blame would be buried without a trace. Subsequently, the pirates recorded the situation on the ship and reported to the captain. Admiral, the ship does indeed have a lot of treasure. The pirate's face showed no excitement, only deep unease. But there's also the corpse of a celestial dragon. Golden Lion narrowed his hawkish eyes. Celestial dragon. Just like his epithet Golden Lion, Shiki had long golden hair that reached the ground, like a lion's mane. In addition, his sideburns and beard were also golden, and his sideburns were very long, making him look like a lion. Yes, Admiral, it seems we've been set up, the man said resentfully. Gee ha 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 ha. I didn't expect someone to dare scheme against me. It seems the fear I've instilled in this world isn't enough. Golden Lion laughed wildly, but his eyes were frighteningly cold. Take me to see that celestial dragon. He leaped from the bow of his ship and landed lightly on the celestial dragon's ship. I don't know what deep hatred there was, but this celestial dragon's death is truly tragic. Even the pirates shook their heads at the celestial dragon's miserable state. Among these pirates, some revealed smug smiles upon hearing this news. They realized they could use this incident to spread their name. It was imaginable that this action would cause a global uproar, and they could use it to become famous overnight. But these people didn't expect that this attack not only yielded a large amount of gold and jewels, but also challenged the authority of the world government. Once targeted by the world government, their days would not be easy. At the same time, above the red line, in the holy land of Mythical. Mythical is the holy land of the world government, inhabited by the most esteemed celestial dragons in the world. Its walls are high into the clouds, its palaces are magnificent and grand, and its towering spires pierce the sky. Anyone who comes to this land will be shocked by the city's imposing presence. However, the atmosphere in the Holy Land today was somewhat strange. The celestial dragons in the streets and alleys of Mythical received shocking news. A ship laden with gold and jewels had been attacked, and a celestial dragon on board had been brutally murdered. All the guards on board were also killed. This news spread rapidly throughout Mythical, stirring up a huge uproar. All of this was obvious. When their lives were threatened, their inner panic and fear would be infinitely amplified. The celestial dragons were the privileged class of the world government, they called themselves superior and never feared anyone. However, at this moment, they felt a rare sense of fear and helplessness. In the palaces of Mythical, some celestial dragons looked serious, frequently exchanging glances. They realized that this attack was not just an ordinary act of piracy, but a serious challenge to their privileged status. We must respond to this incident, otherwise there will be more and more incidents targeting celestial dragons in the future. What does the five elders decide on this matter? Golden Lion's flying pirates are not easy to deal with. They fly in the air, and it's difficult for us to control their exact location. Those with ulterior motives wanted to completely shatter their arrogance, and they did. The combination of various real-world problems put them in a passive position. But they couldn't act according to the other party's wishes. Wait for the five elders' arrangements. The celestial dragons of Mythical felt an unprecedented fear. And those pirates who participated in this incident were laughing wildly in the dark. They knew that this action would cause a sensation in the world, and they would become famous because of it. Marineford. In a peaceful atmosphere, Sengoku finally had some rest. He finally tore open a corner of the senbei in his desk. Buru buru, buru buru. Sengoku, with senbei between his fingers, frowned and looked at the senbei in his hand. After a battle between heaven and man, he finally chose to put it back. Hello. This is Sengoku. Fleet Admiral Kong, what's the matter? Kong sighed heavily. The world government sent him the news of the celestial dragon's murder and asked him to act immediately. He knew this order was inevitable. Although he personally didn't care about the life or death of the celestial dragons, as an organization under the world government, he had to obey orders. Sengoku heard Kong's sigh and had a hint of doubt and unease on his face. Sengoku, I received an order from above. A celestial dragon died near the Sabayati archipelago. They want us to investigate this incident. Kong's voice was serious and heavy, revealing the pressure in his heart. What? A celestial dragon was killed. Sengoku frowned slightly. He knew what this meant, and he understood Fleet Admiral Kong's situation, but facing the pressure from the world government, he knew there was no use in escaping. Yes, Fleet Admiral, I understand, I will set off immediately to investigate. Sengoku's tone was firm. The impact of this incident was unfavorable to them, so they could only do their best. Fleet Admiral Kong nodded and hung up the den mushi, secretly praying that everything would be resolved smoothly. He knew that this investigation would be a journey full of challenges and dangers, but he also believed that with Sengoku's strength and ability, he would definitely be able to give an explanation to those above. On the other side, Sengoku's face kept changing. He couldn't understand why Golden Lion would choose to attack a celestial dragon, and in the Sabayati archipelago, such a place so close to Mythical and Marineford. Chapter 49. Whoa, that celestial dragon is dead. Doflamingo whispered, leaning closer to Dragon. Doflamingo, completely unconcerned about his former celestial dragon status, directly joined the crowd of onlookers, showing great interest. I heard, Dragon said, swatting away Doflamingo's hand from his shoulder in annoyance. Everyone nearby had already heard, was it really necessary to whisper in his ear? The people on the island wore gloating smiles, their eyes flashing with a hint of pleasure and satisfaction. They felt incredibly relieved and were content with the celestial dragon's misfortune, perhaps due to some past personal grievances. Good riddance. I'm fed up with these arrogant celestial dragons. The more that die, the better. Our lives will be easier. Their words were full of mockery and excitement, expressing an undisguised satisfaction at the celestial dragon's death. However, another group of people wore worried expressions, their brows furrowed, their hearts filled with fear and unease. "Keep it down." Someone looked around cautiously. "It's fine to be happy, but who knows what kind of revenge they'll take. I heard that celestial dragons can summon a marine admiral just for getting injured. Now that one's dead, who knows what they'll do." They worried that this incident would trigger even greater turmoil, potentially leading to more violence and hatred, carefully choosing their words, afraid of causing unnecessary trouble or offending certain powers. The atmosphere on the entire island became tense and uneasy, filled with constant discussions. In the streets and alleys, people whispered to each other, passing on various rumors and speculations about the incident. Some people gathered to condemn the violence. "Celestial dragons are beyond our comprehension. Everyone, stop discussing this matter. The celestial dragons brought it on themselves." Finally, someone couldn't stand it anymore. "They should pay the price for the sins they've committed." In this atmosphere, people's language was filled with emotion and complexity. Some were angry, some were fearful, while others showed calm and rationality, but regardless of their emotions, everyone was trying to cope with the impact of the incident while protecting themselves and what they cherished. Suddenly, Dragon turned around involuntarily. He saw dark clouds filling the sky, with lightning flashing intermittently within the clouds. A gale howled past, carrying an indescribable sense of oppression and ominous premonition. A strange unease surged in his heart, as if the sky was brewing an irresistible storm. The world is getting more and more chaotic. I wonder what it will become in the future. Dragon sighed. In this environment, an individual's power is always limited. Hopefully, being by Jinan's side can slightly change this world. He saw a different quality in Jinan compared to everyone else in this world, like the peace that filled the place he used to live. And he also wanted to turn the place he governed into that kind of place. That Jinan, taking so long just to find an old flame, Doflamingo shook his head, lamenting the decline of morality. Dragon's lips twitched. How did this little guy become so unrestrained since leaving the auction house? Enough. Be careful, Jinan hears you gossiping about him when he gets back. I'm not afraid of him. I'll be stronger than him in the future. If he dares to hit me now, I'll definitely hit him back later, Doflamingo said confidently. Dragon didn't say more. He didn't even have the confidence to surpass Jinan, and he really didn't know where this kid got his confidence from. Red line, Pangaea Castle, Chamber of Flowers. The 5 individuals at the highest echelons of the world government, the 5 elders. The 5 highest authorities of the world government sat solemnly together, their expressions grave, their eyes revealing an undeniable authority. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting their shadows on the wall, creating a solemn and mysterious atmosphere. They indifferently gazed at the man opposite them, gently tapping the table in front of them with their fingers. This seemed to be their way of displaying their authority, indicating that they would dictate the pace of the conversation. Fleet Admiral Kong stood opposite them, his posture straight, his gaze firm and resolute. The 5 elders' gazes fixed on the Fleet Admiral. One of them spoke first, his voice solemn and oppressive. Kong, we summoned you here to question you about the assassination of the Celestial Dragon. Can you give us a satisfactory answer? His tone carried a hint of blame and interrogation, his attitude arrogant and unquestionable. Jagartha Saturn, I express my condolences for the death of the Celestial Dragon, Kong said in a deep voice. As soon as the Holy Land contacted me, I immediately arranged for Sengoku to investigate. With his ability, I believe he can certainly handle it well. His expression revealed an unwavering determination. This was his trust in Sengoku, and also a way of demonstrating the Navy's capabilities, Sengoku's capabilities, to the 5 elders. Kong, you're still as eloquent as ever, Marcus Mars said, clapping his hands with a mocking expression. So you believe the life of a world noble is only worth sending one Marine Admiral? As soon as these words were spoken, Kong's expression instantly changed. Facing the 5 elders' questioning gazes, he stood there calmly and composed, his gaze firmly fixed on the 5 of them. Lasky Saint was attacked in the waters very close to Marie Joyce, a place that is generally patrolled by CP. I believe the responsibility for this incident does not lie with our Navy. The Navy is completely cleaning up CP's mess this time. As the Fleet Admiral, he needed to handle problems from the Navy's perspective, not blindly obey the Celestial Dragon's orders. Every Marine's top combat power must be used in the most critical areas. Moreover, the Celestial Dragon wasn't killed by their Navy, so why should he go to great lengths to clean up their mess? Don't forget that we fund your navy's expenses, Jagartha Saturn said with a grim face. You must obey our orders. Kong almost laughed out of anger. Of course I know that the funds come from you, but many pirates with strong potential have emerged. Zephyr and the others have all been dispatched. As long as you give me manpower and funding now, I'll immediately send a group of people to chase after that damn Shiki. Kong gave a self-deprecating smile. In name, he was the fleet admiral of the Navy headquarters, able to command all the navies in the world, but he understood that he was actually just a puppet, and he had to ask the 5 elders for instructions on even slightly bigger matters. The 5 elders could even bypass him, the fleet admiral, and directly issue orders to the various branches of the navy. Don't let their defeat of the Rocks pirates a few years ago fool you. Only he knew that their navy was currently experiencing a generational gap, completely incomparable to the pirate side. Shepherd Jew Peter stepped forward to smooth things over. Kong, I know you're under a lot of pressure, but you have to consider us too. The death of the celestial dragon is widely known, and we must show our strength to deter those who are restless. As for the issue of manpower shortages on your side, we will send CP to assist you. Chapter 50. However, to demonstrate the majesty of the celestial dragons, you must handle this matter beautifully. Saint Zambaran Vinasujiro wrapped his arms around his long sword, a sharp glint reflecting in his glasses. In addition to that, block the news. At least, this matter cannot be published in the newspapers. That might be a little difficult. Kong, the commander-in-chief, frowned. The news he received was that the matter had already spread everywhere in the Sabayati archipelago, and it seemed that someone was deliberately controlling public opinion. The navy on Sabayati archipelago wanted to control this matter before, but it was to no avail. The 5 elders couldn't sit still. How is that possible? The Sabayati archipelago is a mixed bag, and many forces on the island are not under the supervision of the navy. Kong was a little helpless. There's really no way. The 5 elders were filled with regret. The Sabayati archipelago was the most important transfer station for pirates, without exception, and pirate groups of all sizes had eyes and ears in that place. The situation on that island was caused by their deliberate indulgence, but they didn't expect it would backfire now. Do your best. The 5 elders knew that it was meaningless to make things difficult for Kong now. Now that the matter had become a foregone conclusion, they could only use iron-blooded means to prevent those damned pirates from having any thoughts they shouldn't have. I will dispatch all of CP. Saint Jagartha Saturn said, they will also secretly help you complete this mission. Be sure to annihilate the entirety of Shiki the Golden Lion's flying pirates. This wasn't an overreaction. For 800 years, no news of a celestial dragon being killed had ever been circulated, which allowed them to maintain their rule for so long. But now that number had changed from 0 to 1. If they didn't stop those people's thoughts, they didn't dare to imagine whether they would still have the final say in this world in the future. Their status meant that they had to think for the entire group of celestial dragons, and Lord Imma behind them didn't want the world to be in chaos. If this matter was not handled well, they would also be punished. The celestial dragons are supreme, and they must not be offended. They are the gods of this world. A certain unknown sea area. The sea was turbulent, and majestic naval warships were arranged in neat formations, like a barrier across the sea. The flags of the ships fluttered in the wind, showing their majesty and power. Fleet Admiral Sengoku stood on a high platform, holding a telescope, staring at the battle situation in the distance. At the same time, the naval warships released amazing firepower. Shells roared out, cutting through the sky, and bombarded the pirates fiercely. The huge cannon sounds resounded through the clouds, accompanied by thick smoke, giving people an irresistible sense of oppression. Shiki the Golden Lion's flying pirates were being pursued and intercepted by the navy led by Sengoku. Shells exploded around the pirate ships, leaving bursts of smoke, which then dissipated in the howling sea breeze. The pirates stood on the deck, frowning, nervously and anxiously watching the approaching naval fleet, with dense beads of sweat dripping from their foreheads. Admiral, we are about to be surrounded by the navy. Although they were floating in the air, they were forced into a dead corner by the influence of the weather and the continuous bombardment of a large number of naval shells. The pirates on the ship exchanged anxious glances, their hearts filled with fear and anxiety. They knew that the current situation was extremely dangerous for them, and once they were surrounded by the navy, it would be difficult to escape. Didn't we just take some treasure? Why did the navy send so many people to encircle us? A pirate who didn't know the situation asked depressedly. There's no way, we're taking the blame for someone else. That damn thing, if you have the ability to kill someone, go surrender yourself. What's the ability to pass the buck to us? Shiki the Golden Lion stood at the bow of the ship, his golden hair fluttering in the sea breeze, its fate. He had never encountered such a large-scale siege even when he was in the Rocks Pirates. He didn't expect that he could enjoy this kind of treatment now that he was a captain. The sea breeze howled past, the ship swayed, and the shells were blocked by the crew outside the ship, but they knew that they would be finished as soon as they ran out of strength. But resisting still had a glimmer of hope, and giving up would be the end, so they chose to fight to the end. Suddenly, Shiki the Golden Lion burst into laughter. Gee ha 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 ha, Sengoku. You can't take my life. I am Shiki the Golden Lion, a man destined to stand at the peak of this world. Not far ahead, huge islands were floating towards them. I'm waiting for reinforcements to arrive, what are you waiting for? Sengoku. Shiki the Golden Lion laughed wildly, controlling those islands to float directly above the warships. His ability was that as long as he had ever touched something, no matter how far away, he could make that object float and command it at will. What is that? The sailors saw something floating over from a distance, and it was getting bigger and bigger in their eyes. When the small islands floated in the air, they covered the sky and the sun like dark clouds that swallowed the sunlight, and just floating in the air exuded a strong pressure. The trees, rocks, and vegetation on the island swayed with the wind, like an angry beast, ready to launch a fierce attack on the enemies on the sea at any time. The crew members of the naval fleet witnessed this scene, and a feeling of despair rose in their hearts. They had never imagined that they would face a threat from islands. Faced with such powerful force, they felt as small as ants and unable to resist. Everyone, scatter! Sengoku roared desperately. If all these islands were to fall, they would definitely be wiped out. He never thought that Shiki the Golden Lion possessed such a powerful ability. Sengoku. Shiki the Golden Lion's voice came from high in the sky. Why don't we each take a step back? You let me go, and I won't let these islands fall. What do you think? His strength had not yet accumulated to its peak, and he didn't want to fight the navy to the death for the time being. In the current situation, it was best for both sides to take a step back. At the moment when the floating islands hung over the navy's heads, the navy fell into a desperate struggle. They stood on the deck, watching helplessly as the island slowly moved, until it moved over their heads. What kind of crazy power is this? A vice admiral muttered in a low voice, holding the warship's railing tightly with both hands. What should we do? The officers walked to the bow of the ship, their faces full of anxiety and helplessness. Shiki the Golden Lion's threat left them helpless. At the same time, Shiki the Golden Lion stood on the edge of the pirate ship, his eyes flashing with crazy light, as if he was the master of the entire world. Are you still hesitating? His voice resounded throughout the sea. Hesitation will make you pay the price. Sengoku knew he had to make a decision as soon as possible, but he really couldn't make this choice. If they were allowed to leave, the navy's reputation would plummet. If he didn't agree to Shiki the Golden Lion's request, the islands might fall, bringing even more devastating consequences. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, you don't need to hesitate. We believe in your strength to defeat Shiki the Golden Lion. We in the Navy have been prepared to sacrifice ourselves at any time since we joined the army. Just go ahead and do it boldly, we will take care of our own safety. Chapter 51. Shanks woke up and immediately felt the sunlight shining on his bed through the curtains. He was now accustomed to getting up early to exercise, so after washing up, he quickly went out. In the morning light, he saw someone already engaged in rigorous running training, with fine beads of sweat on their forehead. Ginny is still so hard-working, he murmured with admiration. As Shanks was marveling, he felt the ground beneath his feet trembling. Kuma was running past the training field, carrying a huge rock. The rock seemed insignificant on his shoulders, as if it were an easy task for him. A drop of cold sweat ran down Shanks' forehead. Kuma put too much pressure on him. Even though they started training at the same time, he always felt that his strength was getting further and further away from his two older siblings. Good morning, Ginny, Shanks said as he walked towards Ginny, flashing a big smile. It's not early anymore. Ginny stopped and wiped the sweat from her face. You're always getting up with the sun shining on your butt. I'm still growing, so I need to get enough sleep, Shanks said, tugging at Ginny's sleeve. Ginny gently tapped Shanks' nose. Always the same excuse, you. Even though I get up late, I always finish what I need to do today, Shanks said proudly, puffing out his chest. Okay, okay, we know our little Shanks is the best, Ginny praised. Just as Shanks was enjoying Ginny's praise, Jinan came out of the kitchen with a spatula, looked at the warm scene in front of him, and said with a smile, Ginny, Shanks, go call Kuma, breakfast is ready. Okay, big brother, Shanks ran off happily. Ginny, you go in first, I'll go call Kuma. Ginny shook her head and smiled as she watched Shanks walk away. Jinan, what delicious food did you prepare for us this morning? She walked into the kitchen and took the initiative to set the table. I made noodles, we're having oil-splashed noodles this morning, Jinan replied, busy with his hands. Ginny sat quietly in her seat, her eyes shining as she watched Jinan cook. As expected. Jinan is the most handsome when he's focused. Before long, Shanks and Kuma also returned, and the four of them sat around the table, enjoying the delicious breakfast. Kuma, I really envy your ability, you can go wherever you want, Jinan said, peeling a clove of garlic and putting it in his mouth. Traveling back and forth to Sabayati archipelago all depended on Kuma's ability. Jinan only had one thought in his mind, this ability was too perverted. Kuma smiled, haha, my ability is your ability, just ask me if you want to go anywhere. Kuma is the best, we're going to travel around the world in the future. Ginny swallowed the noodles in her mouth with satisfaction and lay back in her chair, patting her stomach. Big brother, is Sabayati archipelago fun? Shanks asked curiously. He also wanted to go everywhere with his big brother, but every time he was ruthlessly rejected by his big brother because of his age. It's okay, the scenery is different from here, but other aspects are not as good as here, Jinan replied after thinking for a while. And it's very chaotic there, it's best for children not to go there. Doflamingo, then what am I? Shanks glanced at his big brother and suddenly laughed, Big brother, I've noticed that wherever you go, big events happen. Looking at Shanks laughing so hard, Jinan also laughed. He found that it seemed to be true, and many of those things were caused by him. He shook his head and replied, bad luck, I'm unlucky wherever I go. Did you see what the celestial dragons look like? I heard you can see celestial dragons there, Shanks asked innocently. Hearing this question, the kitchen suddenly became quiet. Ginny and Kuma both lowered their heads, recalling sad memories. Jinan also saw Ginny and Kuma's concerns and sighed inwardly. The celestial dragons had too much of an impact on them. After so long, they still had such a big impact on them. I didn't see them, I just heard they look like pigs, fat and bloated, and can't even walk on their own, Jinan said. Jinan, you haven't told us about your experience after going out this time, Kuma asked suspiciously. When I picked you up, I seemed to hear the navy chasing Shiki's flying pirates. Did something happen there? Ginny also perked up instantly when she heard Kuma's question, and both ears pricked up. Nothing big, I just heard that the celestial dragon was killed, and the navy is hunting down the murderer, Jinan replied, stroking his chin. He was also very curious about the situation between Sengoku and Shiki now. With their strength, they should be fighting fiercely, but unfortunately he was in a hurry to come back and didn't see the result. What? The celestial dragon is dead. Unlike Jinan's calmness, Kuma and Ginny jumped up from their seats when they heard the news. Shanks was startled by them and jumped up as well, looking at the two of them in a daze, muttering, the celestial dragon is dead, is it necessary to react so much? Jinan took a sip of tea, very satisfied with the two people's reaction. That was the effect he wanted. To break their inherent idea that the celestial dragons are untouchable, let them know that the celestial dragons are also people and can be killed. Then let them gradually get out of the psychological shadow caused by the celestial dragons. Celestial dragon. Celestial dragon, Kuma repeated these three words with tears in his eyes. Shanks looked at Kuma who suddenly started crying, immediately leaned over, wanted to comfort him, but didn't know where to start, so he could only grab Kuma's clothes with his small hands. Looking at the ignorant Shanks, Ginny's inner grief was reduced a lot. Her inner pain was no less than Kuma's. It's just that she's used to using a smile to hide her inner pain. Flapping flapping. The sound of birds flapping their wings came from outside the door. Today's newspaper is here, I'll go get it, Jinan said, looking at the depressed people, left his seat, and walked towards the door. The newsbird is specially used to deliver newspapers. The big events in this world need to be understood through this newspaper, and the price is still affordable. Give me a newspaper, Jinan handed over 100 berries. The news bird pointed to the small backpack on its chest with its wings and squawked twice. Hey, today's service attitude is so bad, be careful I go and complain about you. Jinan took out a newspaper from the small bag, and returned directly after holding it in his hand. How is it? Feeling better? Jinan unfolded the newspaper in his hand, and the headline of the news directly came into the eyes of the four people. Urgent report. Navy Headquarters Admiral and Flying Pirates Fleet Admiral Shiki launched a great battle in the Jialun Sea. Many islands were destroyed in the battle. Shiki was defeated and fled. His whereabouts are unknown. The Navy suffered heavy losses. Sengoku was seriously injured and escorted back to Marineford for treatment. Chapter 52. Dragon and Kuzan stood at opposite ends of the training ground, their bodies radiating astonishing auras, like two mountains facing each other, creating an indescribable sense of oppression. Sunlight filtered through the layers of trees, casting down upon them, leaving behind two beautiful silhouettes. A breeze swept past, sand and dust whistling around them, their gazes fixed intently on each other, not daring to be careless in the slightest. Nearby, Ginny and the others sat with melon seeds, well aware of Kuzan's strength. However, they were only seeing the other person for the second time, and his specific strength could only be known after they exchanged blows. They were all looking forward to the clash between the two on the field. This match is quite interesting, it wouldn't be surprising if either of them won, Kuma said solemnly. The strength of both in the field should not be underestimated. One grew up by Vice Admiral Garp's side, learning a lot of things they couldn't access through constant exposure. The other had been following Jinan, charging into battle, with extremely rich practical experience. The two had their own merits in terms of identity and strength, and each had their own specialties. Hearing this, Ginny and the others didn't speak, just focused on cracking melon seeds. This kind of sparring was perfect for eating, allowing them to eat much more than usual. The entire field was shrouded in a tense and solemn atmosphere, as if the air had solidified. They stood in the center of the battlefield, their eyes met, as if sparks flew, igniting the air. The stillness at this moment was the final calm before the battle. In this stillness, everyone could feel a subtle balance. And this upcoming battle would completely break this atmosphere. Standing on the sidelines, Dragon finally couldn't suppress the fighting spirit within him, and with a light lift of his arm, a finger pistol was launched from his fingertip. Compared to Dragon's preemptive strike, Kuzan was much calmer, taking in the other's every move, simply dodging to the side to avoid this probing attack. Sharp observation, Dragon stood in place, an exceptionally powerful aura erupting, like a howling gale, pressing towards Kuzan opposite him. The intense aura impacted Kuzan, his body trembled, then he raised his head, and an aura no less than the opponent's also erupted. Then the two rushed into the sky together, turning into two white streamers constantly colliding in the air. Neither of them used their own devil fruit abilities, only competing in physique and combat skills. If they used their abilities, under the influence of the natural system's massive attack range, this area would be completely destroyed by them. Not to mention that both of them were not very old, but their strength had already surpassed their peers by an unknown amount. Facing people of the same age, they could defeat them with one move. The number of peers who could make them take seriously could be counted on both hands. The two instantly engaged in battle, and countless sounds of fists and feet intersecting rang out in the sky. Various moves emerged endlessly, and the attack frequency was like a storm. Shanks, who was happily cracking melon seeds, looked at the two's wonderful sparring and weighed his own strength in his heart. Just by comparing physique, the power emanating from their fight made him break out in a cold sweat. These two freaks, how am I, a weakling, supposed to survive? With these shining examples in front, he felt immense pressure. Shanks shouted in his heart. As the two fought, the surrounding environment also changed. Initially, the field was calm, the breeze blew, and the leaves rustled. However, as Dragon and Kuzan's duel became more intense, the sky was filled with dust, and the air was filled with a burnt smell. The sparring ground began to crack, rocks were scattered by the aftermath of the two's battle, and the soil rolled, as if it had been bombed by artillery shells. A storm gradually rose, the trees swayed, and everything on the training ground was destroyed beyond recognition by the two's battle. Dragon's speed was as fast as lightning, fighting Kuzan up close, every move was a fatal attack, this was his highest respect for his opponent. Kuzan's expression was calm, meeting him with thunderous speed, his arm shook slightly, directly forcing Dragon back. Dragon Claw Fist! A low roar came from the sky, and an emerald green claw print suddenly burst out from Dragon's hand, under the offensive of this attack, the air seemed to let out a wail. Hey hey hey, this move of yours is a bit of a foul. Saying so, Kuzan's moves in his hand were no less inferior to Dragon's attack. An ice blue palm print struck out horizontally, facing it head-on. The field instantly became their arena. They released their inner passion and strength to their heart's content, enjoying this sparring. The clothes on their bodies were already tattered, their hair was disheveled, but their eyes were still full of fighting spirit and enthusiasm. When the two's fists and claws intersected, a powerful energy erupted, enveloping the entire field. A powerful shockwave swept across, engulfing everything around it. Finally, the two stopped their movements, their chests rising and falling, panting and looking at each other. Then, they burst out laughing at the same time. The two were covered in dust and bruises, but in their hearts, they were filled with respect for each other and the joy of meeting a worthy opponent. It's been a long time since I've felt this good, let's continue next time. Dragon tore off the already tattered clothes on his body, his face filled with a smile. The two of them were happy, but the spectators had a headache. Kuma and Ginny looked at each other, wondering what Jinan would think when he came back and saw the outside of his house looking like this. Damn, what happened to my house? Who did it? Come out! A roar suddenly sounded in front of the house. As Jinan's voice rang out, the laughter in the backyard field suddenly stopped. A violent gust of wind blew out from the front door, stirring up the wind and clouds for a time, and the dust covering the house was swept away. You two! If you want to fight, can't you go somewhere else? You have to come to my place, will you pay for the broken things? Jinan's voice arrived before he did. Suddenly, a powerful and invisible force descended, and an invisible hand pressed the two heavily on the ground, making them unable to move. Then, Jinan slowly walked up to them, his eyes deep, like a deep lake, making people feel endless pressure. Dragon and Kuzan looked at each other at the surrounding environment and both revealed a wry smile. They both came to find Jinan, and after chatting for a while, they cherished each other and couldn't help but exchange blows, but they didn't control their strength well. Jinan walked to the backyard and looked at the scene in front of him, his heart was bleeding, the flowers and trees he had painstakingly cultivated were all gone now. His face was indifferent, as if he had no emotions, he didn't say a word, only the power in his hand that controlled the two was the expression of his current mood. He raised his hand and gave the two a heavy blow on the head, making their eyes go black and their consciousness fall into chaos. Good, you came to my house to cause trouble, isn't the base's large field enough for you to mess around in? Listening to Jinan's scolding, both of them lowered their heads and dared not refute, honestly standing there being sprayed with saliva by Jinan. Kuma and the other three spectators witnessed this scene and were extremely shocked. The two who were still showing their power just now were easily subdued by Jinan, which made them have endless associations with Jinan's strength. They knew that Jinan's power far exceeded their imagination. He will also be their idol forever. Chapter 53 Sorbet Kingdom, Jinan's residence. As the leader of the entire South Sea Navy, Jinan naturally needs to shoulder the responsibilities that come with the position. Maintaining the stability of the South Sea, protecting all the people of the South Sea from pirate attacks, handling various disputes on the islands, assessing the code of conduct of the Navy soldiers. However, Jinan has already delegated all these matters to Kuzan, and Kuzan is responsible for resolving the manpower issues. Kuzan, didn't I delegate all the power to you? Jinan said helplessly, holding his forehead. Shouldn't you be able to handle those things with ease? Why are you running to me again? Kuzan gave a wry smile. Is it really okay to say this kind of thing so openly? Admiral, the headquarters asked me to tell you in person that Golden Lion might come to our South Sea. The headquarters did ask him to relay this matter to Jinan, but they didn't say to tell him in person. The reason he came to Jinan's residence at this time was just to get a free meal. As for the Golden Lion matter, he confirmed with the person who conveyed the information to the headquarters that he might come to the South Sea, and there is a high possibility that he will go to the East Sea. After all, the East Sea is known as the weakest sea, both pirates and navy are weak, and the East Sea is Golden Lion's first choice if he wants to recuperate. Golden Lion? He's seriously injured. Even if he comes to the South Sea, he won't be able to do anything in a short time. Just arrange a team of Navy soldiers to patrol the South Sea regularly. The injured Golden Lion will definitely be on high alert. It's unrealistic to find his location in a short time. However, let the islands be on alert. If small islands or similar things disappear for no reason, report it as soon as possible, Jinan warned. Received. I will implement your instructions. Kuzan gave a military salute. Oh, right, Dragon is here too. Jinan patted his head. From now on, you two should consult with each other. Leave the South Sea affairs to you. Dragon and Kuzan looked at each other and nodded at the same time. Dragon said somewhat embarrassedly, Admiral, so far, I've only done things like catching pirates. Handling affairs. I might not be good at it. Or, I should just focus on catching pirates. When Dragon was at the headquarters, he had no contact with management-related matters at all. Specialization in a field is essential. He is good at leading troops to fight, but he is self-aware when it comes to handling affairs. P.S. The Revolutionary Army commanded by Dragon only attacks and captures kingdoms, and then chooses a respected person from their own country to take the stage, without fundamentally solving the problems that exist in those kingdoms. Dragon, do you remember the purpose of Garp asking you to come to me? Jinan asked. Dragon replied without thinking, Vice Admiral Garp asked me to come and learn from you. As he said that, he himself reacted. That's right, learning. You must learn how to manage islands and pay attention to people's livelihoods. Jinan emphasized. But Dragon was still a little hesitant. Jinan snapped, no buts. Everyone learns slowly from scratch. Don't think about becoming a fat man in one bite. If you don't know how, you can ask Kuzan and the others for advice. You must remember that those who are accomplished are your teachers. Everyone has something worth learning. Jinan patted him on the shoulder and encouraged him, I believe you will definitely grow into a naval commander who can stand alone. Feeling Jinan's strong expectation, Dragon's eyes instantly became a little moist. This is such a great expectation, this is such trust in him. If he refused like this, wouldn't he be disappointing Jinan's good intentions? At this moment, he seemed to have found his guiding light in life. Dragon replied loudly, I will learn from them. Jinan nodded with satisfaction, and his heart was overjoyed. He had tricked another worker into working, and his pressure had been reduced a bit. Great! Jinan secretly glanced at the energetic dragon. The South Sea Navy can do things like exterminating pirates. It's better to leave professional matters such as handling affairs to professionals like Dragon and Kuzan. They all have this qualification. The future admiral and leader of the Revolutionary Army both have extraordinary abilities. Work is important, but cultivation cannot be put down, Jinan reminded. You too, did you hear that, Kuzan? Got it. Received. The two replied at the same time. Dragon has received elite education since he was a child. After making a decision, he will definitely work hard to achieve it. Kuzan wants to stay with Jinan all the time, and improving his strength is a necessary path. Admiral, when can we eat? I haven't tasted your cooking for a long time. Kuzan said somewhat embarrassedly. Jinan shook his head and smiled, I knew you kid definitely had ulterior motives. You've been exposed so quickly. Isn't it just getting a free meal? You make it sound like I've done something bad. Kuzan laughed. 6 people gathered together, sitting around a spacious dining table, with laughter constantly echoing. The table was filled with all kinds of delicacies, with a fragrant aroma that made people drool. The lights in the room were soft, and the warm atmosphere made people feel comfortable and happy. Looking around at the carefully prepared sumptuous meal on the table, Kuzan said with a smile, It's been a long time since I've seen you cook such a big table of dishes. We're in for a treat this time. Dragon looked at the various dishes on the table and asked, Why haven't I seen these dishes before? Just eat yours properly. Why are you talking so much? Kuzan put a chopstick of vegetables into Dragon's bowl. You can't eat these things outside the Sorbet Kingdom. Dragon took a bite and immediately felt the fragrance lingering on his lips and teeth. It's so delicious. There are also many special delicacies in this world, such as water meat, seafood rice, and natural barbecue lizard meat, but they don't quite suit Jinan's taste, so he can only cultivate some vegetables and seasonings himself. It can only be said that the products of the system are definitely high quality. These things he cultivated have become special products of the Sorbet Kingdom, and part of his military expenses come from selling these things. Marine Headquarters, Marine Fort, Medical Room. Sengoku, you almost screwed up this time, Garp said gloatingly. Sengoku was annoyed by the sound of Garp chewing on senbei. You guy, don't bother me here. I finally took some time to come and see you, but I didn't expect you to be unappreciative, Garp said dissatisfied. We joined the army together, Don't break my heart. Sengoku's forehead bulged with veins. You still know that you and I are in the same class? When I asked you to help me encircle and suppress Golden Lion, I couldn't even see your shadow. Garp knew he was in the wrong and retorted in a low voice, wasn't I unable to catch up in the East Sea? You came here to anger me when you couldn't catch up. Sengoku was really angry and his chest hurt. He sighed, if it weren't for the Sea Peace help this time, I might not have been able to come back. Garp frowned, with your strength, you shouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state fighting a golden lion, right? There's no way. I can't exert my full strength at sea. Golden Lion used his ability to control too many islands, and I couldn't take care of them all. Moreover, Golden Lion doesn't only have himself on his side. Chapter 54. From what I've heard, we're sending quite a few people as well, right? Garp said hesitantly. Sengoku turned his head to look out the window. But we lack people who can withstand the pressure. When the island was falling, all the people I brought were preoccupied with their own safety and couldn't provide me with support. He faced the entire flying pirates of the Golden Lion alone. I think our navy needs to replenish itself with some fresh blood. Judging from recent times, the rising stars on the pirate side far surpass what we have here. Sengoku's expression was somewhat desolate. Most of the children nowadays take pride in going to sea as pirates. Their numbers and quality are constantly improving. On the other hand, the growth of fresh blood on our navy side is very slow, and elite talents mainly rely on naval families to replenish our ranks. We are now in a very difficult situation. Ah? Is it that difficult? Garp was a bit bewildered. I always thought our combat power was pretty good. It seems I was overthinking it. If he had known about the difficulties the navy was facing, he would have tricked that Jin and Guy over here directly. I can recommend some people to you, Garp muttered, stroking his beard. Sengoku pushed up his frog-like glasses. You're talking about Jinan, right? That guy's strength and ability are indeed very good. He's a good seed. Sengoku paused, as if thinking of something. According to news from the South Sea, this guy seems to have a tendency to be lazy now, and has left all the affairs of the South Sea to his deputy, Kuzan. That's not a good habit. Garp recalled his time with Jinan, and it seemed that there were signs of this even back then. So I think it's best to let him come to headquarters for a period of study, but he hasn't been in charge of the South Sea for very long, so let's wait and see for a while. What Sengoku was thinking was that Jinan must gain a foothold in the entire South Sea before he could leave. Otherwise, if he couldn't establish his authority, the good situation in the South Sea might be ruined by pirates taking advantage of the chaos at any time. Just as the two of them made a decision, a powerful and majestic voice rang out outside the ward. I've also heard a little about that young man. I agree with your opinions on this matter, but the matter of recruiting people is indeed urgent. Hearing this voice, Sengoku and Garp's expressions changed immediately. Garp stood up straight from his seat, his body ramrod straight, and even the smile that he always wore on his face instantly disappeared, replaced by a respectful expression. Sengoku, who was lying in bed recuperating, didn't care about the pain in his body and struggled to get up. There was only one person in the Navy who could make them both act like this. The current Fleet Admiral of the Navy headquarters. Kong. The burly figure pushed open the door and walked in. There was deep fatigue on his face, but he still showed a smile when facing his two subordinates. Sengoku, with your body, you should just lie down properly. Don't get up and cause me trouble. Kong said with a smile and a scolding tone. Fleet Admiral Kong. Sengoku and Garp shouted respectfully at the same time. Are you feeling better, Sengoku? Kong nodded to them. The Navy suffered heavy casualties this time. Sengoku said in a hoarse voice, it's all my fault. I apologize to you. No. Sengoku, I'm not blaming you. You've done a very good job to this extent on the sea. Kong shook his head and comforted him softly. Sengoku was silent, and his heart ached when he thought of the Marines who died in the battle. After this incident, many families lost their breadwinners. Those families probably hate him, the person mainly responsible, to death in their hearts. Kong took Sengoku's expression into his eyes. How could his heart not be grieved, but time is always moving forward. They must prepare for the future generations and respond to the challenges ahead. I have discussed the matter of recruiting for the Navy with the 5 elders. Kong said with difficulty. Hearing this, Sengoku and Garp asked with anticipation, how is it? Did the 5 elders agree? Kong first nodded, then slowly shook his head. What do they mean? Fleet Admiral Kong, don't keep us in suspense, Garp, who was impatient, asked directly. Sighing, Kong said with difficulty, they agreed that we can recruit for the Navy, but they will not pay for the extra naval expenses. Isn't that the same as not letting us expand the army? Garp said angrily. He couldn't understand the five elders' thoughts at all. A bitter smile appeared on the corner of Sengoku's mouth. As expected, he shouldn't have had too much expectation for the world government's decision. Although the five elders, representing the world government, gave me such a broken answer, I still decided to issue a public announcement to the world. Kong's eyes were firm. In his position, he must fulfill his responsibilities. Since he is the Fleet Admiral of the Navy headquarters, he should have the corresponding courage and be worthy of the word justice behind this uniform. But, we have no money at all. Most people in this world dream of becoming the Pirate King. If we can't afford to pay the salaries of those newly enlisted, there's no way to recruit people. A clever woman cannot cook without rice. That's the situation the Navy is in now. I'll figure out a way to solve the money problem. Kong took out a cigar and lit it. The main thing now is to find a way to attract capable people to join the Navy. What the Navy needs are generals who can stand alone. In this world where pirates are rampant, although he doesn't want to admit it, it is a fact that ordinary Marines can hardly achieve anything. Talent is hard to find. I think we can brainstorm together. Sengoku looked at the position where Garp was standing. Garp slapped his thigh. That's right. Although that kid Jinan can't come to headquarters yet, he has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. It's okay to let him help come up with ideas. Jinan has this ability. Kong exhaled a puff of smoke, somewhat disbelieving. Sengoku was also a little unsure. He should have it. That kid has a lot of ideas. Remember the things I brought back the other day? Garp's eyebrows danced. Thinking of the delicious food that Garp brought back, Sengoku and Garp both swallowed their saliva. Of course I remember. We've never seen those foods before. Garp had black lines all over his head. I'm talking about the chairs and other things that improve the quality of life. What chairs? Sengoku and Kong looked confused. They had never seen the things Garp was talking about. Looking at the reactions of the two, Garp also knew that he had let something slip. Because they couldn't finish all the food, he sent some to Sengoku and the others. As for the other things, he kept them all for himself. Those things are not important. I use these examples just to let you know that that kid has a strong imagination and can provide us with some help. Chapter 55. These old fogies in headquarters finally wised up. Having just finished the discussion with Sengoku and the others, Jinan smiled knowingly. The Navy had to build a strong and obedient force, otherwise, it would only be buried with the world government in the great age of piracy. This was something Jinan obviously didn't want to see. It's good to be under a big tree to enjoy the shade. If the tree falls, how would he slack off? Looks like Sengoku and the others have completely seen the true colors of the world government, saving me the trouble of wasting my breath. Jinan rocked his recliner, enjoying the peaceful life. Captain Jinan, the warship for departure is ready. Kyuzan knocked on the door frame, waiting at the entrance. Jinan picked up his tea and took a small sip, his swaying body slowly stopping, and he sighed imperceptibly, saying leisurely, I know, alas. I really don't want to move. This was his first voyage as the South Sea Admiral, with destinations including but not limited to the world government-affiliated countries in the South Sea. This also meant that he would have to spend a long time at sea. Inside the medical room, after listening to Jinan's suggestions, everyone fell silent, stunned by Jinan's ideas. They had never thought that recruitment could be done this way, which made them feel that they, at their age, were not as insightful as the young man. What do you think of the measures Jinan just mentioned? Kong, with steel bones, withdrew from his thoughts and looked at the others beside him. Tsuru was still savoring the ideas Jinan had just given them. That's right, she was also called by Kong to the medical room to participate in this discussion on recruitment. I think the methods Jinan gave have some reference value. Sengoku fully affirmed Jinan's proposal. First, emphasize ideology, show the importance of participating in recruitment for maintaining the country and protecting the homeland, so that people realize that their participation is crucial to the stability and security of the entire society. Secondly, maintain information transparency and strengthen communication, provide detailed information, explain the purpose, background, and significance of recruitment, and enhance their understanding and support for recruitment policies through interaction with the public, and improve the legitimacy and acceptability of recruitment actions. Finally, tell them about the social recognition and sense of honor of joining the army, and give them due respect and honor. Through social recognition and a sense of honor, inspire people's sense of pride and mission, and enhance their willingness to participate in recruitment. These measures can fully mobilize people's emotions, make them feel that joining the Navy can get a lot of benefits, and also give them the motivation to try. Sengoku summarized the measures proposed by Jinan, and the more he thought about it, the more he felt that they could be implemented according to these methods. I agree with these measures, he said 100 times. Just listening to that kid made me feel excited, and I can't wait to join the army again. Garp waved his hand directly, gesticulating to express his inner excitement. I also agree, but Jinan also mentioned one point: promise to provide reasonable treatment and benefits, including salary, medical security, family support, etc., to attract people to actively respond to the recruitment call. Can Marshal Kong do this? Tsuru folded her arms in front of her chest. She knew the amount of funds the Navy could use, so she took a wait-and-see attitude on this point. Hearing Tsuru's question, everyone in the medical room looked at Kong with steel bones. Tsuru, I don't like what you said. Kong stubbed out his cigar. Problems that can be solved with money are not problems. He had not been the Navy Marshal for so many years for nothing, and he still had some ways to make money. Of course, just in case, you can also join the money-making army. Kong coughed lightly. Many people have great power, and you can also share some of my burden. In fact, it doesn't cost much money to recruit the Navy. The big expenses are on the Navy's equipment and training. Equipment refers not only to knives and guns, uniforms, but also warships. Most of this world is ocean, and the Navy will be unable to move without warships. I have something to do, so I'll go first. Garp ran faster than anyone else when he heard about money. I am your superior, you have to think about the consequences of disobeying orders. Kong stated the ironclad facts in a calm tone. He always meant what he said, and if Garp really dared to run away, he would give that guy an admiral to be the next moment. But, old man Kong, I really don't have any money. Garp said with a bitter face, and even took out all the pockets of his trousers with both hands. Kong said angrily, do I still have to teach you how to make money? You just pretend to be a bounty hunter. There are so many pirates on the sea, can't you catch them and exchange them for money? Anyway, the money is paid by the world government. The air was a little silent, and Kong found that the three people in the room were looking at him inexplicably. Cough. I'm just saying a way to make money quickly, I haven't done this before. Kong believed that he worked diligently and was down to earth. If he was not forced by life, he would never do such a thing. The three people watched him silently. They felt that he must have done this before, so he would say it like this. But this is indeed a quick way to make money. Then we'll go first, to see if there are any other ways to recruit more Navy. Although Tsuru did not quite agree with the method proposed by Kong, there was no other better way to look at the current situation. After all, the Navy is really short of money now. I don't want to go out. It's never my turn when there are good things, and I'm always called on at this time. Doflamingo looked unwilling. He had finally found something interesting in the Sorbet Kingdom, and he was also with his younger brother Rosinante. Now, because of Jin An's order, his plan was going to be ruined. Brother, I still have to go to class. Don't worry and go out with Captain Jin An. Rosinante said excitedly. After Doflamingo left, no one would drag him to do those strange things. He found the benefits of going to class. The classmates are good-looking, and they speak nicely. The teachers are responsible and teach interestingly. Now if you don't let him go to class, he won't be happy. He loves school. Learning makes him happy. You. Doflamingo pointed at his younger brother, feeling betrayed. They had clearly decided before, but there was a traitor in the middle. Looking at his brother's cannibalistic eyes, Rosinante shrank unconsciously behind Jinan. Jinan touched Rosinante's head. This little guy was much more likable than Doflamingo, and he had a good relationship with Shanks. Now the two of them have become good brothers, and maybe they even have the idea of becoming sworn brothers. I'm doing this for your own good. Jinan said earnestly, it's better for you to go out and see the world more. Then why don't those few have to go out with you? Doflamingo pointed unhappily at Kuma and the others who came to see him off. Jinan scratched his head, they still have things to do. Doflamingo still wanted to struggle. Following Jinan would never be a good thing. Last time he was a slave, God knows what strange things are waiting for him next time. But why so many questions? Jinan grabbed his clothes and dragged him directly onto the warship. Chapter 56. When will this end? Jin sat on the ship, surrounded by the vast ocean. He quietly sat on the ship's railing, feeling the cool sea breeze on his face, closing his eyes, and listening to the sound of the waves hitting the hull. Before him lay the boundless sea, with its surging waves that seemed to never reach the end. The waves rose and fell, sometimes gently caressing the ship's side, and sometimes surging forward fiercely. I told you I didn't want to come out. Doflamingo continued to complain, his face filled with a sense of life being meaningless. The vastness of the sea inspires awe, as if standing on the edge of endless time, gazing at the unknown distance. But in this boundless ocean, one can also feel endless loneliness, as if one is the only existence in the sea, isolated from the entire world. I really don't understand. I could have been lying at home resting, enjoying life with a cup of tea, but because of you, my plans are all ruined. Doflamingo glared at Jin, who was sitting by the railing. The strong never complain about their environment. Jinan took off his sunglasses and said indifferently. It would have been better if Jinan hadn't said anything, because as soon as he spoke, Doflamingo exploded. Since when did you consider me strong? Besides, I'm clearly still a child. His current situation was exactly as the saying goes, following Jinan means being hungry 5 times every 3 days. Although he wasn't actually starving, he felt even more miserable than if he had been starved 5 times. They had now patrolled more than 10 countries, and Doflamingo was truly sick of the days at sea. Every day, all he saw was the sea, and more sea. Don't you like the sea? Doflamingo knew who it was. He turned his head and saw a tall man standing behind him. Seeing him, Doflamingo's expression clearly improved a lot. On this warship, Kuzan gave him the best feeling, coming to chat with him every day so he wouldn't be so bored. The warship was full of marines, and everyone had their own tasks to complete, leaving him alone with nothing to do. Except for that person who lay on the deck chair all day without moving. Looking at the person on the chair, Doflamingo thought of a term his mother used to say, something about a useless hillbilly. Even the most beautiful things become boring if you look at them every day. Doflamingo retorted, you don't seem to mind being at sea for long periods of time. Kuzan nodded, affirming what Doflamingo said. Of course, because I know that every time I go to sea, I can do many meaningful things. Meaningful things? A hint of ambiguous smile appeared on the corner of Doflamingo's mouth. But after observing for this period of time, I feel like many kingdoms like to do superficial things. In order to cope with the Navy's inspection, each kingdom showed their best side, using superficial prosperity to gloss over the reality. Kuzan's expression was heavy, and he did not refute. He must have discovered what Doflamingo said, but he had no way to change these things. No one can change it. Don't you guys get tired of talking about these things all day? Jinan asked lazily. The peace that comes from covering up the truth is still peace. At least those countries still try to conceal things. If they don't even bother to conceal it, either that country is on the verge of destruction, or those people no longer take the law seriously. Jinan took everything very lightly. While alive, exert as much energy and emit as much light as you can. Our Colonel Jinan sees things clearly. Doflamingo complimented insincerely. Jinan glanced at him. This kid's personality probably couldn't be changed. He really would try to tear down the house if he wasn't beaten for a day. Kuzan looked at Jinan, who was lying on the deck chair at the ship's railing, and said helplessly, if you keep lying down like that, you'll leave a bad impression on the Marines. In his eyes, Jinan was good in every way, but he was too lazy. This greatly damaged the image of the stalwart figure in his heart. The childhood filter was almost used up. Don't talk nonsense. Jinan didn't even change his posture. He was well aware of what kind of image he had in the eyes of the Marines. The wind in the South Sea was always so noisy. When it blew across people's bodies, it also carried the power to erode their hearts. Therefore, he was so lazy. Jinan deeply believed in this. So, he chose to continue lying down. Kuzan had no way to deal with a person who wanted nothing. Although forced melons are not sweet, they can quench thirst, but there was nothing in that melon. What could Kuzan do? Kuzan shook his head helplessly and turned to Doflamingo, saying, you can't become like this in the future. Doflamingo put away his expression of watching a show and nodded seriously. Seeing that you're bored, you can train with me in the future. Your aptitude is good, so you have to make good use of it. Kyuzan thought of a brilliant idea and said directly to Doflamingo. Ah! Doflamingo, stunned, stood there, realizing he had become part of the show he was watching. Let's start tomorrow. You can prepare today. Kyuzan said seriously, the Navy's training is very hard, and I will supervise you closely. He would be honored if a good seedling grew up under his training. Thinking of the envious and jealous expressions of those people in the Navy in the future, Kyuzan couldn't help but beam with joy. It's a deal. Kyuzan left directly. He wanted to prepare and train to his heart's content tomorrow. Ha 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 ha. Doflamingo glared at the place where the laughter came from. What's so funny? Nothing, I just thought of something funny. Jinan wiped away the tears of laughter from the corners of his eyes, saying intermittently. You wait. Doflamingo gritted his teeth and ran into the cabin. Isn't it just the Navy's training? What's so difficult about it? He didn't believe that mere training could do anything to him. Jinan closed his eyes and pretended to sleep, but his mind was filled with another matter. The note rewarded by the system told him to go to the sea area in half a month, saying that there would be information about a missing island. He also asked the navigator to take a detour to the sea area adjacent to the calm belt. As a result, not only did he not find anything, but it was also very desolate here. They were the only lone boat on this sea. The vanished island. Jinan murmured. He believed that anything the system rewarded must have some special significance. Killing the celestial dragon was a whim, but it was also the choice that best suited his heart. Moreover, at the moment of the celestial dragon's death, the system, which had not given rewards for a long time, unexpectedly rewarded a lot of good things. That's why he kept staying here. In order to find that island, he was prepared to continue waiting. Chapter 57. The huge warship sped across the sea at an exaggerated speed, propelled by the sea breeze. 2,000 push-ups, I finished them. A childish voice reported weakly, filled with deep exhaustion. Kyuzan nodded. As expected of the boy he had his eye on, he finished a bit earlier than he expected. Not bad. Next, let's move on to the next training exercise together. Doflamingo supported himself with trembling hands, flipping his body over to face the sky, and said bitterly. Can I refuse? He felt that his hands were no longer under his control, and continuing to train would kill him. Dofla, you need to believe in yourself. It's just 2,000 push-ups. This is nothing. I believe you can complete the next training mission, Kyuzan encouraged. He was also training with Doflamingo, and he even increased the training volume several times more than Doflamingo. This didn't even count as a warm-up for him. Good luck, Dofla, I'm rooting for you. Jinan chimed in, adding fuel to the fire. The more pain this kid felt now, the happier he was. He was a professional at watching people suffer. Doflamingo didn't even have the strength to raise his hand, so he simply ignored Jinan's words and breathed in large gulps of air. Next is climbing the mast. I look forward to your next performance, Jinan said mercilessly, looking at the 40-meter-high mast, describing Doflamingo's next training project. Ah! Doflamingo exclaimed in surprise as he looked at the mast in the distance that seemed to connect with the sky. It looks like I'm going to die here today. However, at that moment, an accident happened. Roar! A huge roar resounded, like a cry from the depths of hell, shocking everyone on the warship. The Marines looked at each other, expressions of horror appearing on their faces. At that moment, the sea seemed to transform into a giant beast, lurking with unimaginable threats. The oppressive feeling of the roar was like an invisible mountain, directly pressing down on everyone's hearts, making them feel unable to breathe. What's going on? Is a sea king passing by? The warship was sailing too close to the calm belt, and they were aware that there was a certain probability of encountering sea kings inhabiting this area. Check the direction of that big guy making the noise. The navigator commanded. Upon hearing this, the scout immediately picked up his binoculars and tried to see where the sound was coming from, but only saw a turbulent sea and a vast expanse of water, with no signs of anything unusual. However, the existence of the monster had already filled everyone's hearts with fear without words. After all, the unknown is the most terrifying. A young marine pointed into the distance with a trembling finger, and said stammeringly, There's something under the ship. His voice trembled, and his psychological defenses seemed to be on the verge of collapse at any moment. The navigator's expression was solemn. He took a deep breath, trying to maintain a calm voice. Prepare to avoid this area. Everyone, immediately enter battle stations. The Marines acted according to orders, their movements hurried, but they revealed a sense of order. The ship's weapons were quickly checked, and defensive measures were urgently deployed. Everyone was doing their best to prepare for the possible danger. At that moment, a tense and solemn atmosphere permeated the warship. Everyone's heart was tightly strung, ready to respond to the unknown threats that might emerge from the depths of the ocean. Don't panic, turn the ship around and head in the other direction, Jin An's calm voice reassured everyone on the warship. His composure gave all the Marines a sense of security, and they handled their responsibilities in an orderly manner. The ship urgently changed direction, trying to quickly leave this dangerous area. However, the sea seemed to have been aroused by the monster's presence, and the waves began to roll, surging and obstructing the ship's navigation. So what if it's a sea king? It's just a stinky fish making waves under the sea. If it catches up, Colonel Jinan can easily subdue it. The Marines shouted loudly, using words to dispel the fear in their hearts. The ship's body swayed violently with the undulation of the waves. The crew members struggled to stand firm, doing their best to maintain the ship's stability. Bang! The waves were like a huge wall, rushing towards the ship's body again and again. The splashing sea water hit the ship's side like sharp blades, making ear-piercing collision sounds. The ship struggled to traverse this turbulent sea. The speed of advance was slowed and difficult due to the obstruction of the waves. The bow was occasionally submerged by towering waves, and the splashing water made navigation even more difficult. The stern was pushed violently by the waves, as if to throw everyone on the ship into the sea. As the warship shook violently, a dark shadow, whose outline could not be clearly seen at a glance, cut through the sea and soared into the sky. Splash! The Sea King slammed into the sea, stirring up waves hundreds of meters high, and sea water poured down from the sky like a torrential rain. Hold on! Hold on! The Marines roared one after another, looking at the giant waves in front of them, deeply feeling the insignificance of mankind. This is already bigger than an ordinary island. Doflamingo opened his mouth wide. I knew it, every time I go out with this damn Jinan, nothing good ever happens. Tisk tisk tisk, what a big guy. Just when everyone was about to give up, a calm voice that made people feel at ease suddenly sounded. Hearing this voice, the Marines' chaotic hearts calmed down, and then they involuntarily looked at the owner of the voice. They saw Jinan holding his Yanling saber, standing at the bow of the ship, examining the huge Sea King in front of him with great interest. The Marines silently stared at the protagonist, and a sense of pride welled up in their hearts. They firmly believed that as long as Jinan was there, they could overcome any difficulties and obstacles, and even defeat the behemoth in front of them. I know you have intelligence no less than that of humans, Jinan said slowly, leave now, and I can let bygones be bygones. The Sea King looked down at the tiny human in front of him with disdain. He had brought despair to countless people over the years wandering in the calm belt, and this was the first time he had seen someone who wasn't afraid of death. It seems you don't appreciate it, Jinan shook his head regretfully. Such a big head, but he didn't expect the IQ to be so low. Killing this big guy shouldn't have any bad effects, right? Jinan asked, looking at the crowd behind him. Jin An's words stunned everyone. In their eyes, the monster that they couldn't defeat was like a lamb to be slaughtered in the colonel's mouth. Colonel Jinan, please take action. Our strength cannot shake the Sea King in front of us. Quzhan was one of the only two people present who were not afraid of the Sea King, but with his current strength, he was still completely unable to resolve the crisis in front of him. However, just as he finished speaking, Quzhan only felt a blur in front of his eyes. When he reacted, Jin An's figure was long gone. Colonel Jinan. Jin An's actions startled Quzhan. He knew that Jinan was a devil fruit ability user, and this was the sea. If he accidentally fell into the sea, wouldn't it be all over? Chapter 58. The sea breeze howled, stirring up surging waves, as if cheering for the battle about to erupt. Jinan gripped the hilt of his blade tightly, sensing the aura of the colossal beast before him. His mind and body seemed to merge with the blade in his hand, and with each surge of power, the blade's edge seemed to tremble. Jinan drew his sword from its sheath in a flash. Clang! On this vast sea, the crisp sound of the blade was clear and loud, like a long, drawn-out zither melody, conveying the determination to kill far into the distance. Jinan waved his hand, and the blade flashed through the air like lightning, emitting a sharp whistling sound, as if tearing through the fragile film of time and space. His movements were swift and fierce, each swing seeming to cleave the entire sea in two, the astonishing sound of the blade like a heaven-collapsing roar, shaking the entire sea and seemingly stopping the waves from breathing. The sound of the blade had never been so clear, especially considering this was the boundless sea. Kuzan and the other marines simply couldn't believe their ears. The Sea King seemed to sense the protagonist's power, pausing for a moment with a flash of surprise in its eyes. But this momentary pause was only fleeting, and then its eyes surged with an even stronger intent to destroy. It raised its massive body, as if to crush the entire sky. Jinan was not afraid, his eyes flashing with a burning light, even licking his lips. The Sea King before him was already his prey. So far, he had not tasted what a Sea King tasted like. Roar! The Sea King in front of him was huge and mighty, its body like a moving mountain, covered in thick scales that shimmered with a metallic luster. Its eyes shone brightly, filled with a fierce aura, as if to devour the protagonist alive. Jinan soared into the air, wielding his sharp blade. The light of the blade flashed, like lightning cutting through the night sky, illuminating the rolling sea. The dazzling white light illuminated the entire world, and at that moment, even the light of the sun was obscured. Seeing the sword mark that pierced through the heavens and the earth, Doflamingo felt his jaw about to drop. Wow! On the warship, the marines gathered on the deck shouted in amazement, because before their eyes, a huge sword mark, like a miracle, was reflected in their pupils. And where the sword mark had passed, the giant Sea King that had filled them with despair was split in two. Before the giant Sea King could even feel the pain, its body swayed and eventually crashed heavily onto the sea, stirring up a huge wave. Blood instantly stained the sea red. The marines looked at Jin An's figure on the sea. That figure stood towering on the sea like a deity, his coat fluttering in the wind behind him. They witnessed this fleeting battle, saw Jin An's casual killing of the giant Sea King, and their awe of Jin An was like a surging river, impossible to contain. At the moment the giant Sea King fell, the marines seemed to release the enormous pressure that had been pent up in their hearts. They stared at Jin An in stunned silence, their eyes filled with shock and awe. This is simply incredible. As expected of Captain Jin An. His swordsmanship, his spirit, it's beyond my imagination. I've never seen anyone able to face such a behemoth with such ease. He is my idol. Jin An floated on the sea, but at this moment, he was worried. He now had the feeling of having a mountain of treasure but not knowing how to use it. This guy is too big, the warship can't fit it at all, what should I do? Captain Jin An is checking his spoils of war. I didn't expect him to be so handsome even at this time. The female marine on the warship said admiringly. Kuzan looked at the marines beside him and smiled self-deprecatingly. He had been worried about Jin An's image in the hearts of the marines, but he didn't expect things to be so unpredictable. Behind him, the huge Sea King's corpse became as small as gravel. Jin An could only take away the most delicious part of the meat. As for the rest, Jin An could only reluctantly abandon it with tears in his eyes. He moved from the bow of the ship to the stern, and only when the Sea King's figure disappeared did he reluctantly withdraw his gaze. Doflamingo couldn't understand Jin An's state of mind. He had clearly accomplished something so awesome, but he was so reluctant to part with the Sea King's meat. I want to be like you. Doflamingo's eyes flashed with light, a worship of the strong and a desire for strength. What? Jin An couldn't understand Doflamingo's words. I mean I want to become a strong person like you. I felt what a real strong person is like for the first time. I want to have the power to subvert everything. Doflamingo imagined the future. He wanted to pull those celestial dragons who called themselves descendants of gods from their thrones, and trample them underfoot. And now, the road to becoming stronger had been paved under his feet. As long as he followed Jin An, he believed that the future in his heart would definitely be realized. Jin An looked at the kid in front of him who started giggling after speaking and was a little confused, and silently distanced himself. How many things are you hiding from me? Kuzan's voice sounded faintly in Jin An's ear. He thought he knew Jin An well enough, after all, he was a little fan, and he knew that Jin An could defeat the Sea King, but he didn't expect to kill it with one move. Damn it! Jin An was startled. Can you not speak in this tone? I'm scared. Why did this tone sound so much like a girl abandoned by a scumbag? How could a grown man speak so resentfully? Jin An crossed his arms, feeling goosebumps all over his body. He pondered for a moment and replied, my strength is, okay. Someone like you. I should be able to beat 10 of you. There were many marines around, and they were also curious about Jin An's strength. However, they didn't expect to hear such an explosive description. When did Quzhan become a unit of measurement? They had never dared to think about such a thing before. I really can't understand you more and more. I don't know what your strength will be like the next time I see you take action. Unconsciously, darkness enveloped the sea. The sea was shrouded in darkness, its vastness seeming to contain endless mystery and danger. Moonlight penetrated the gaps in the clouds, casting a faint silvery white light, like a bright moon in the sky sprinkling on the surging sea. However, this faint light only barely illuminated a small area of the sea, and the rest remained deep in darkness. On this dark sea, the waves surged, emitting a low roar, as if a group of bound beasts were calling for some unknown power. Or the unknown creatures hidden in the deep sea, they loomed in the darkness, giving people a mysterious and uneasy feeling. Without the bright sunlight and clear blue sky of the day, it was replaced by a deep and treacherous atmosphere. People sailing on this sea at night seemed to be in a world full of unknowns and dangers, and every shadow might hide a deadly threat. Little ones, there's a warship ahead. It's your time to shine. Chapter 59. Under the night sky, the sea was like a strip of black silk, separating heaven and earth, with a mysterious aura permeating the surface, as if concealing countless unknown dangers. The sea at night seemed like a bottomless abyss, where even nearby objects were swallowed by the darkness. Behind the warship, a dark figure quietly approached, a massive pirate ship gliding across the water like a ghost, its sails hidden in the darkness, leaving only a deep silhouette. Captain Lit, the cannons are loaded. A pirate hurriedly ran to the bow of the ship to report to the man holding binoculars. Lit, with a bounty of 25 million berries, was a notorious pirate in the South Sea, leading his pirate crew to attack many innocent merchant ships and naval fleets, striking fear into the hearts of people. On the bridge of the pirate ship, Lit stood at the bow, his eyes burning with ambition and desire. He narrowed his eyes, his fingers tightly gripping the ship's railing, waiting for the opportune moment. Behind him, a group of fierce and arrogant pirates armed with weapons also awaited his command. Understood. Lit stretched out his fingers to feel the change in the wind direction, then raised an eyebrow. We can attack. Suddenly, Lit issued the order to attack. Roger. The pirates, like wild beasts, glared at the warship in front of them, silently paddling their oars, and pounced on the naval fleet. Lit chuckled, after plundering this warship, they could have a good time for a long time. Oh? I didn't expect there to be pirates who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Jin An's expression was a little strange. Could there be pirates in this god-forsaken place? Quzhan was also puzzled when he heard this. There don't seem to be any islands nearby, right? Could it be that they are too weak and only dare to huddle here? But Quzhan quickly denied this idea. It was obviously impossible for those who were weak to dare attack the navy. Jin An had eaten a little too much for dinner and didn't want to move much now. Go handle it. Quzhan put on his coat and walked towards the deck in leather shoes, his steps steady and powerful. To be honest, as long as Jin An didn't take action, he, Quzhan, had never been afraid of anyone in the entire South Sea. Everyone, cheer up, the pirates are coming towards us. Without hesitation, he immediately ordered his men to prepare. The naval soldiers did not dare to be careless and immediately responded, busy adjusting the fleet's defense layout to prepare for the possible attack. The pirates on the pirate ship noticed the movement on the warship, and a trace of cruelty flashed across their faces. Lit stood at the bow, his eyes filled with violence. He knew he had to act now. Are you ready? Lit's voice was cold and firm, his hand tightly gripping the ship's rail, his eyes scanning the situation on the sea. Ready! The pirates shouted in unison, their eyes burning with the flames of battle, fearlessly facing the upcoming fight. Lit decisively said, fire! Boom! With Lit's order, the cannons on the pirate ship roared in unison, illuminating the dark night sky, the firelight reflecting the raging waves. Quzhan's eyes were fixed on the cannonballs fired from the pirate ship, and he rushed to the front of the warship without hesitation. He focused on controlling his abilities, his hands began to gather strength, emitting a pale blue light, and the cold air made the sailors on the warship shiver. Suddenly, beams of ice blue light shot out from under his feet, like sharp blades, cutting through the sky. Ice block, partisan. The ice spears rotated rapidly, and the biting cold air spread out. The cannonballs fired from the pirate ship were hit by the ice cones before they approached the naval fleet. A series of dazzling lights flashed, and the cannonballs were frozen into a crystal clear piece of ice, and then fell into the sea, splashing bursts of waves. Lieutenant Commander Kuzan blocked the enemy's cannonballs. The naval soldiers witnessed Kuzan's performance, and a sense of admiration arose in their hearts. Next is our time to counterattack. Their navy was the best at using cannons, and unlike the pirates, their ammunition was sufficient. The situation instantly reversed, dozens of cannons were aimed at the pirate ship, and with a huge roar, the cannonballs slammed into the pirate's ship, stirring up monstrous waves. The pirate's hull trembled on the sea, as if it was in danger of being sunk at any time. "Captain, the navy's artillery fire is too fierce, it has completely suppressed us," the pirates complained. "There are also ability users on the other side who have resolved all our attacks." Lit frowned, knowing that the long-range tactics had failed, but fortunately, with the crew's unremitting paddling, their ship was very close to the warship. "Release flashbangs, prepare for boarding." In naval warfare, boarding is a very dangerous fighting method, which requires the crew to have superb combat skills. Their pirate crew happened to be good at this kind of combat. The pirates immediately took action. The crossbowmen on the ship raised the flashbangs, they skillfully lit the fuse and threw the flashbangs at the naval fleet. Suddenly, dazzling rays of light bloomed in the night sky, illuminating the entire sea, making the navymen dizzy. "Charge!" Lit waved the weapon in his hand and led the pirates to bravely launch an attack on the naval fleet. "Kill!" Taking advantage of the flashbang effect, the pirates pounced down like wild beasts, stepping on the bridges made of iron chains and rushing towards the hull of the naval fleet. Lit's eyes flashed with cunning light, he waved the swords in his hand coldly, and rushed to the warship deck first. "Ha ha ha ha, navymen, prepare to die, I am Lit who is here to send you on your way." He knew that now was a decisive battle, only by completely defeating the naval fleet could he win and seize greater spoils. "Are you looking down on me?" Kuzan's eyes flashed with cold light. "No need to look behind, your men won't be able to get over." Ding! The iron chain connecting the two ships made a crisp sound, and the pirates standing on it fell into the sea together. "You!" Lit swallowed, looking at the ice knife in the opponent's hand. "I think we can sit down and have a good talk." At the same time, a huge figure was swimming in the depths of the seabed. Attracted by the light of the flashbang, it gradually approached the surface. As the deep-sea behemoth approached, the pirates found that the world had become brighter, as if it was dawn. As for the navy, most of them still had their eyes closed, and the flashbangs had not disappeared. "Is it dawn?" the pirates asked puzzled. They instinctively felt that something was wrong. It was only midnight now, and the sun was still sleeping. What caused the sky to become like this? Just when everyone was confused, the sea water began to surge continuously, and the sea surface was turbulent, forming a huge vortex. In the next moment, a huge column of water suddenly rose from the sea, like the hand of the sea god, instantly overturning the pirate ship, splashing water everywhere, stirring up exclamations and chaos. The pirates were scattered by the violent water flow, some were swallowed by the sea, and some were hit by the water column, suffering heavy casualties. The warship was not much better, the hull was tilted, and it looked like it was about to be overturned by the sea, and the people of the naval fleet grabbed the railings in a panic. The battle between the two sides was interrupted by this sudden deep-sea threat, and they all looked up at the chaotic situation on the sea, revealing horrified expressions. The deep-sea behemoth swam leisurely, its eyes flashing with a trace of indifference, as if staring at the frozen sea. Its existence made the entire sea area more dangerous and mysterious. Chapter 60. Ice Age. Kuzan placed both palms close to the sea. The sea surface was rapidly frozen, and the warship was also frozen at a very dangerous angle. The pirates were not so lucky, their eyes filled with terror as they couldn't even beg for mercy, instantly turning into ice sculptures. "We're saved." The Marines released their hands and landed steadily on the ice surface. "Don't let your guard down," Kuzan warned. "The guy who attacked us is definitely still under the sea. I feel like the danger posed by this guy in the sea is even greater than the sea monster we encountered yesterday." The Marines were still shaken, looking at the dozens of meters-high ice pillars beside them. "This place is too close to the calm belt, encountering danger twice in such a short time. I think we can leave this sea area. Let's wait for Captain Jinnen's notification." The encounters of the past 2 days had left them shaken, but they made a living doing this, and being with danger was a common occurrence. Boom! A violent tremor came from the ice surface, startling the Marines who were chatting, thinking the monster in the sea had returned. Everyone, get on the ship. A familiar voice came, and the Marines looked at each other, looking towards where the warship was. The thick ice layer below the warship became fragmented, and the warship returned to its original state from its precarious position. Even in the direction of advancement, the ice layer just revealed a straight route. Yay! Long live Captain Jinan! The Marines cheered and formed an orderly queue, climbing up the ladder lowered from the warship. Below the frozen sea surface, the giant beast hidden in the dark depths of the sea finally found the culprit who had deceived it. Roar! A roar rang out, and it suddenly broke free from the ice on the sea surface, ice blocks and water splashing everywhere. Boom! With a deafening roar, the giant beast leaped out of the water, a figure over 100 meters tall soaring into the air, dazzling lights dispelling the darkness on the sea in front of its fish head. It was actually a lanternfish giant that exceeded imagination. This lanternfish giant was majestic and imposing, its scales shimmering with a deep reddish-brown light, as if it were a mysterious creature from ancient times. What kind of lanternfish is that? The warship isn't even as big as one of its teeth. The Marines on the sea stared in astonishment at this scene, and they couldn't help but be shocked by the appearance of this behemoth. Moreover, the imposing aura of this giant lanternfish was unbelievable, as if it were the true master of the ocean. Kuzan, freeze the waves! Jinan said in a deep voice. When the lanternfish fell from the air, it stirred up a sea wave, and this momentum was several times more terrifying than a tsunami. Unfortunately, before Kuzan could deal with the giant wave covering the warship, the lanternfish in the sea let out another roar. It's too late. Kuzan looked anxious. In this vast sea, if the warship was destroyed, even if they survived the lanternfish's attack, they would hardly escape death. Under the majesty of the lanternfish giant, the ocean seemed to be silent, leaving only the giant beast's roar echoing in the night sky. It was the undisputed overlord of the sea, in charge of the lives of all living beings in this sea area. Ding! System side quest issued. Fight with Lord Lantern and ensure the safety of the Marines. Quest reward, training space time, a random devil fruit, 500 million berries, store points plus 10,000. Please host be careful, this opponent's strength is beyond your imagination. Jinan finally knew what the information given by the system meant. The culprit who swallowed the island was this lanternfish in the sea. Closing the system panel, Jinan smiled wryly. The monster in front of him was one of the top monsters in terms of size that had appeared in the pirate world so far. Such monsters may have skin that is tens of meters thick, and Jinan didn't know if his current strength could shake this behemoth. Kuzan, the safety of the Marines next is up to you. Jinan tore off the coat he was wearing. Doff, you must also concentrate on training during the days I'm away, I'll come and check later. What are you? Kuzan hesitated. Don't be stubborn. Doflamingo was also anxious. I'm still waiting for you to teach me some powerful moves. You have my life card. Jinan showed a confident smile. I won't fail. Kuzan understood what he meant, the life card could tell if Jinan was safe, and he was preparing to fight the huge lanternfish to exchange for a chance of survival for them. Roar! With the roar of the lanternfish giant, the ocean seemed to be stirred up by huge waves, the wind howling and the waves surging. And at this moment, Jinan's body slowly rose into the air in the astonished eyes of everyone. Floating in the air, Jinan felt a strange power surging within his body, carrying him up into the sky. In the eyes of everyone, Jinan's body continued to grow larger, and his body gradually merged with the clouds. He felt a powerful energy surging within him. His eyes flickered with a strange light, and he seemed to be undergoing a long-awaited transformation. At the same time, the lanternfish giant rushed out of the sea, its body towering, like a huge mountain, its eyes flashing with fierce light, and its mouth making a deafening roar, as if venting its inner dissatisfaction. Then, the lanternfish giant waved its tail, and a huge whirlpool suddenly formed on the sea surface, devouring everything in the ocean, and the warship was also caught in it. The warship kept spinning in the vortex, being ruthlessly devoured, and the Marines controlled the warship trying to escape, but they seemed powerless and insignificant in the face of the huge power. Don't panic, grab everything around you. As the clouds churned, Jinan's voice came from the sky. Suddenly, the clouds were torn apart by a huge claw, and a huge beast emerged from the clouds, its body extremely huge, its skin bright cyan, as if it were from a distant mythical legend. This beast carried an incomparably powerful aura, as if it were the embodiment of heaven and earth, its eyes as bright as shooting stars, projecting an unparalleled majesty and power, its huge body standing in the air, blocking the moonlight, casting a silent shadow, like a sea god. Jinan transformed into an azure dragon, overlooking everything, his body standing straight in the sky, his dragon eyes flashing with cyan light. The dragon's body exuded a powerful aura, his dragon tail swayed, stirring up storms and huge waves, his dragon claws clenched the void, as if controlling everything. Azure Dragon Fruit. Kuzan murmured, looking up at the sky. It's the first time I've seen Captain Jinan use his fruit ability, I didn't expect it to be this situation. The expressions of the Marines changed from astonishment to surprise, and they watched as their warship escaped the shackles of the vortex. We're flying. The warship was shrouded in flame clouds. Under the protection of the flame clouds, they soared into the air and flew into the sky.